Okay, welcome everyone. Can you see the screen? Hope so. And that, by the way, I ripped off that image. That's a Moshav song, single song. I guess, I don't know, it's not an album cover. Yeah, Dancing in a Dangerous World, yeah. But it's really fascinating and appropriate for, I use it for our Matrix group. If you don't know this story real quick, you have this imagery here with the serpent, obviously, and then a young woman, and then things like blowing up in the background. And those three things together should possibly ring a bell, but very much related to certain texts that are out there regarding the Shekhinah and the Nahash and the creation of the new heavens and new earth from Isaiah and elsewhere. So I thought that was a amazing image to use for our group, because where we're heading with the Matrix movie is all along those themes, as far as I can guess. And the guess is based on the last three movies going exactly as they should. So we'll see. It should be very, very interesting. What we're doing tonight with this room, this is the second one. A couple months ago, I did the first one on the basically covering what's generally called the worlds of existence. That's our, and we're going to very quickly review a little of that tonight to set the tone for what's next, which is a little bit more of the focus on the Sefirot. Some of this is basics for some people, and some of it's new stuff. Some of it may be new in terms of how it's being applied to the Matrix script, etc. So I'm recording this. The intent here is, as we get into the summer, there's going to be a lot of marketing, advertising for the Matrix movie coming up. Probably, I'm guessing, right after Memorial Day is my guess. It's going to start. They want it out there all summer for people to hear. So that being the case, there's going to be a lot of internet traffic, a lot more traffic in the Matrix groups that are out there, etc. So I'm trying to get a few things lined up for that. We'll go deeper with the subject matter over the summer. Plan is to write, Elisheva and I working together, working on taking some of these topics into deeper areas with maintaining a matrix connection, as well as hopefully doing some podcasts, maybe videos. We'll see if we're working on that. It's usually a matter of time constraints. So hopefully we'll get as much that stuff out there over the next few months. And the movie hits in December. So that's the plan, Stan. For those of you unaware, so I've been a pretty big Matrix fan, to say the least, since the movie came out. We actually didn't see it in the theaters. We just missed it, but then it came out on DVD, and I was going to my former roommate's birthday party, and I said, we got to buy him something. So we got this movie we heard was pretty cool, and we played it. We went to the party, and then someone said, hey, why don't we put that movie in? So we slapped the DVD in there, and like 30 people just gathered around and watched this whole movie. It's like the whole party just stopped. I've never seen anything like this. Everyone stopped and just watched the movie for like 2 hours. It was incredible. So I said, well, that's pretty wild. And 4 years later, we did go to the theater to see the second and third movies. And since then, we've been locally with local group, and then on websites and of course Facebook, presenting different material with how this Matrix movie is amazing in how it reflects a lot of these Torah principles, more mystical Kabbalistic Torah principles, of course, and really, in one sense, all creative work by human beings does in one way or another, because we're all made in the same image. So it's going to reflect back to that. We all follow the same pattern. It's just some things, some artwork, some songs, some movies, some books just are a little bit more tapped in than others in terms of what they reflect. And in my opinion, nothing comes close to the Matrix movies. So that's where that's at. I would suggest, let's see if this works first of all. I can move my screen. No, the screen's not moving. Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to be able to make sure I can get this to move. There we go. I should have changed the screen. I hope you're looking at a ink bottle and pen here, or whatever you call it. Did I lose my volume here? Volume dropped out there for a second. I got to keep an eye on that. Okay, so just to make sure this is working, everybody should be looking at a inkwell, little inkwell thing, right? Yeah, there we go. We have the chat box open, so you can post some questions in there. I may not see them, but I'll look at the break. We'll take a couple of breaks, 2 or 3 breaks. If it makes sense to address them right away, we will. If not, we'll save them up for different places or at the end of everything. Questions are good. The more stuff people bring up regarding the different themes and concepts, the better. The more we can expound on it, expand it. As I said, we keep writing more and more articles about this stuff because it's really this. You might say, well, how much can you write about the movie? But it's really not about the movie. It's about what the movie points to, and that's pretty much an infinite amount of information. So a lot more to come, and anything that you all can help out with at any point with questions and comments is really appreciated. So that's the goal. So if you want to run and get a pen and paper, or if you got a side electronic device and you can type real quick. And you have anything that you want to bring up later, please do. We also have the Facebook group, of course, the Matrix4Humans group. I'd like to continue some good discussion in there. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is giving me a hard time. This works. There we go. As I mentioned 2 months ago, because I had to skip last month. So 2 months ago, we talked about these, we introduced something called 2 templates. There's 2 major, what I call templates in the Bible. One of them is kind of a general structure, and it's called a template of 4, although there's a hidden 5th element. We'll cover that in a second. And the other template is a template of 10, which are 10 emanations of God that exist in and animate all of those other 4. Okay, so you have the 4 general, think of them like floors to a building, levels to a building, and then each one is independent, is different than the others, but they all have something in common, and they all have walls and floors and all furniture and all that. So, but it's a little different at each level. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here in terms of the framework to the Bible is very much built on these 2 templates, and they appear all through the Bible. You just need to know what to look for. So that's one of the goals. By using the Matrix movies, we can introduce some of these concepts in a way that's easier to understand, because it's very difficult to get hold of certain texts, and even more difficult to read them and understand them if you're not used to the material. So we're presenting it through the Matrix movies, using them as a vehicle, if you will, kind of like a midrashic vehicle, telling the story, using the story to tell a story. Okay, and so we're going to take a very quick look here just for a couple minutes on what these 2 templates were. Let's hope my clicker keeps working. There we go. So the first of the 2 templates is called the 4 worlds of existence. Okay, and before these 4 worlds of existence, I said there's a hidden 5th world. This is a hidden 5th world of outside of existence, or pre-existence. Okay, which we really don't have much information at all about, other than certain things that have been passed down through the oral Torah. But regarding the 4 worlds of existence, as I said, this template of 4 is seen in different places in the Torah and in the Tanakh, the rest of it. And one of the fundamentals related to that is a 4-letter name of God, is a Yod and the Hey, the Vav and the Hey. That 4-letter name of God, which is the one that is used more than all the other names, twice as much as all the other ones combined throughout the Tanakh. And that name of God, of course, is made up of 4 letters. And there's a concept here that when you put your pen down and make the first letter, that little yud, then where you put your pen down, it suddenly disappears when you make the yud. That's that hidden fifth element, 5th level that's out there, and we don't deal with regularly. But one of the places that we do see the 4 worlds of existence very clearly, probably maybe the most clear example, is in the dream that Jacob had. Jacob had this dream in Genesis 28. You're all familiar with it, I'm sure. And you'll see these four elements or these four worlds of existence within his dream. He's on the earth. He's in this physical world that we live in. So when we speak of that first world of existence, it's everything we can see, everything we can smell, taste, touch, etc. It's everything you can see with a microscope or a telescope. That's all our physical world of existence. So one thing I want to mention right now is sometimes you'll hear a certain word, and a word in one context means something very different than in another context. So for instance, if you hear a word like the heavens or heaven or heavenlies or something like that, a lot of people will think, oh yeah, like the sky or the clouds or outer space and all. And in some contexts, you look at the clouds in the heavens, okay, like that. But heavens has a whole different spiritual meaning in Kabbalistic texts like this, as we're discussing. So just something to keep in mind, that how words are used. And if you're not sure, just ask or make a comment later or whatever. So Jacob's on the earth in the physical realm, and then he sees a ladder going up and down. This ladder are angels, some going up, some going down. That's the next world beyond ours, if you will. It's not like physically above ours or anything like that. It's beyond, just we'll say it, beyond is the best word we have. And the angels, Malachim, they're messengers, so they're going up and down. And that's that middle realm called the angelic world, if you will, okay? And the angels are clearly going up and down from the earth up to somewhere, and that somewhere is what we call the heavenly realm, the above. And the heavenly realm here, spiritually speaking, is where you would consider these somewhat more abstract ideas like the throne of God in the heavenlies, and the archangels or the forces of creation, and that kind of stuff. Okay, so this is those three worlds, those three levels are all considered part of creation. All right, so everything that was created using that term, specific term, creation. In fact, that highest world of the heavenlies is called Beriah. Similar word as bara in Genesis 1, where in the beginning Elohim created, bara, Elohim, Beriah, same thing. So that's the world of creation, but the two of obviously below the angelic world and our physical world are all part of that as well. And then there's a fourth world above these three, which is outside of creation, but still within existence. Hey, it's called the world of existence, amongst other things. It's also called the world of nearness, Atzilut, nearness, meaning it's near to what is beyond. It's the near world, nearest world that we have, that we can think about, talk about, etc. Okay. So one of the concepts we brought up, I don't remember it's coming up again tonight, but while it's on my mind, I'll just mention it. You have the idea that God is beyond our thoughts. God is unknowable. God is outside of existence, etc. And that's an aspect of God. It's only one God and completely unified. It's just how we relate to it, how we think of it. So God is outside of existence in that respect. But then you have the whole idea of God whom we talk about, pray to, read about, etc. That is within existence. So you have these two very different concepts of God, yet it's just one God. And so when we're talking about in the Bible, for instance, in the very beginning, in the first chapter of Genesis, where it says, in the beginning, God created, those first few words, in the beginning, God, is the idea of God outside of creation, because then comes creation on the next word, and the verse continues. So you have an idea of God outside of creation, and then one even that we can still kind of relate to, but then you have the whole idea of God that's outside of existence completely that we can't. So there's just things to keep in mind as we go forward, because that helps actually makes things very clear at some points where it can get confusing studying Torah and all. So these are important concepts. All right, so this is the basic review of this one, the first of the templates, the template of 4, which has that hidden 5th dimension. And again, this is one example found in Genesis. If you go up on YouTube, or you go in our group and find the link to the YouTube recording of the last session we did, I give 6 or 7 different examples of this template that are found in that is found in the Tanakh. There's a verse in Isaiah, and there's others. And so if you want to look at that at some point, the link is in our group. As these worlds jumping a little bit into the matrix here, then we'll pause and then come back to the matrix a little bit later. But just to show you how things align. So those worlds of existence that are found in the Tanakh and the whole entire Bible too, they even appear in the New Testament. These worlds that create a framework. Excuse me, I gotta let somebody in. These worlds create a framework for all of existence and what brought everything into existence. And that same framework, that exact same framework, and we show that in our studies, our articles in the Matrix4Humans.com website, where we have over 50 some odd articles now. We show how the structure, the framework in the matrix world is identical to this. So you have, if we were going to start from the creator's point down, you have the, actually, let's start from the bottom up because that's where Neo's journey started. So you have, in the world of existence, of course, you have this physical world we live in, which is called the world of concealment in literature, Torah literature, because we don't see these spiritual worlds. We don't even know they exist until we tap into them, until we become aware of them, Lord willing. Many people never do. So this is a world of concealment, just like the Matrix world is a world of concealment. And then, of course, there's something between here and what's above, which is an angelic world that manages things on Earth, just like the program world manages things in the Matrix. And then above that, you have that highest level of creation that we mentioned called Beria. And this is the higher level of programs. I should probably just put program. It's really the domain of the Oracle, as we'll discuss more tonight in a few minutes. And she is the interface too, just like that higher level of creation is the interface between this and what's beyond creation. So she plays that role in that she is the gateway both to what's beyond as well as the connection to the humans below. And then finally, you have the next world, which I mentioned earlier, is the world called Atzilut, which means nearness, which means it's near to what's beyond everything. And this is that aspect of the creator, as we see that creator, as I mentioned in Genesis 1, where it says in the beginning, Elohim created. So it's that concept of Elohim being the creator, yet there's something beyond that. Just like in the Matrix movie, the architect is called the creator, but there's something beyond him because he too was created. Okay, and we got a pretty cool video to show, a couple short videos tonight to help spice things up a little bit too. And then finally, beyond all of this, something that nobody knows much about, only they've heard about it in the movies, in the Matrix movie itself, I mean, is something they call the source. And nobody really knows what the source is. A couple people and programs refer to it like, oh, you got to get to the source, but nobody really has a handle on what it means, just like we don't have a handle on what God outside of existence means. We just know that there's something beyond what we can comprehend. We're not God, so we can't fully comprehend God in his essence. So we could call that the essence of God, if you will, that goes beyond. So this is how the basic alignment, the basic framework, if you will, of how the matrix worlds align with the worlds of existence. And the right-hand column is simply Long Neo's encounter, and we have lots of material and articles on what this is, Neo's journey, as it comes in multiple stages. Each movie represents one level of the soul, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But as you know, he meets Trinity first down here. She is from beyond. She represents what you would call the divine presence, or Shekhinah, in that instance, that one has to first make contact with the presence of God, the first gate, as it's called in our world. And then you have the concept of the one who helps you connect to what is beyond, that Zadik, the righteous person, teacher figure, which is Morpheus. And then, as I said earlier, he gets to that highest level of creation, which is the oracle's world, which is the gateway between below and above. And then finally, the architect. And we discussed this. I don't want to go over it all in great detail, so I would encourage you to either take a look at the video from 2 months ago. As I said, the link is in the group, or just go up to Matrix4Humans.com. We'll give that link out later, where we have all the articles explaining this in far more detail. My sound cut off a bit. I got to keep an eye on that microphone symbol here, so hopefully it wasn't for very long. All right, a couple more review slides real quick. Oh yeah, so there's another aspect of these worlds of existence, which, as I said, are 4, but really 5. And that's an idea that the soul, in Jewish Kabbalistic understanding, the soul has 5 dimensions or 5 levels. And we move from one up to the next. The nefesh is your basic soul that every human being is going around. Everyone has that nefesh going, or you wouldn't be going around. And it's really not concerned with things spiritual. And then sometimes people get to a level where they do start pondering there's more to life than just, feeding your face and going to see the ball game or whatever. And then that's that level of ruach, which is parallel. These things are parallel to those worlds of existence that we mentioned a few minutes ago. And that if you think of that level up from Jacob, where the angels are going up and down, it's a lot of transition back and forth. The same with ruach. It's a lot of pondering, a lot of, checking things out, maybe some failures, some successes on your spiritual journey, setbacks, who knows? You may go off the rails and come back, but that's the whole level where we struggle. And then the neshama is that level where hopefully, Lord willing, you get to this level of neshama, which is, as I said, is like that level of the oracle where you're now, at that highest level within creation and able to even possibly peek into what's beyond that. And then those are the 3 levels of the 3 soul dimensions that most human beings try to, or hopefully try to, connect with in this life. Generally speaking, when you're talking about fully connecting with the 2 upper levels, upper dimensions of the soul, it doesn't happen while you are alive in this realm. It's they're more, with some rare exception, they're more associated with what your soul is able to connect with after you leave this life. Exceptions would be in Jewish literature, Moshe is said to have been at that level of chaya, and then it said that Mashiach is the one that will be at the level of Yechida. And the thing is, it's not that chaya is completely out of bounds to us. Because when you are thinking of just the person, just the individual, you're thinking of those first 3 levels of nefesh, ruach, neshama. But then we all know there's more to it than that. We all know that there's a community of people who are, seeking Hashem and connecting at that level, so to speak. And so that level of Klal Yisrael, of people that are united spiritually, that level of a unity of one, and echad, is that level of chaya. So we do have some type of access to connecting at that level, but which is a different thing than being fully whatever I'm trying to say, accessing it. Okay, just checking something here. All right, so I think that might be it for just the background stuff from last week. Yeah. So all right. Question here. Can't hear. Oh, you can hear now, right? What does the world of the real represent? The desert, like the desert of the real? You mean that phrase from the movie? Yeah. Well, obviously, you think of somebody who has no spiritual, concepts at all in their mind, and you're friends with them, and you want to introduce this kind of idea to them. It's you're introducing to them what real is, that there's more to life than just this physical world. This world of the Matrix is not really real. It's not the real reality. It's part of all reality, but it's temporary, and there's a reason for it, and it's not the way it was meant to be. Certainly not. Just like the whole Garden of Eden story is not the way we are now. It's not the way it was meant to be. So so the whole idea of concept of desert of the real, as far as Morpheus mentions it, is introducing Neo when he mentions that phrase in the first movie. He's got the TV set there and all of that. He's trying to carefully, break in Neo to the idea that reality is not what you think, and reality is like a desert, and that there is much to try to figure out and go out and etc. In fact, a lot of the times in the Tanakh and elsewhere, you'll see people would go out in the desert to meditate, to make connections spiritually, to, you know, and all of that. So there's multiple aspects to that phrase, but basically it's simply saying, you know, welcome to reality, Neo. It's going to be a lot trickier than, you know, just walking down the street. You're going to be out in the desert here and trying to figure it out. It's a whole different ballgame when you're trying to figure it out. And that's what Neo does for the first 3 movies, is he's continually trying to figure things out. Okay, let's see if I did miss something else here. All right. So yeah, like when we're talking about like a group that might come together to do kosher meditation or something like that, we have people, or even in the literature, it says, you know, that many people praying together, actually there's some strength and power in that. It's not some superstition thing. It's not like it's guaranteed to give you this or that result, but there is definitely, and that's why Hashem stresses unity amongst the brethren, as it's called, in the Tanakh, right? So it's very important to understand that even in Israel, you know, everybody would only move as fast as the slowpoke, you know. It didn't mean that people didn't have ability to have individual thinking and all of that, but the community mattered, you know, and so both physically as well as spiritually, and they do mirror each other like that. Everything down here mirrors what's above. So you have the idea of a spiritual Israel, you know, the Knesset Israel above and down here as well. So that's why it's important to get together, and that's why I love the internet and Facebook and all these things, because there's, you know, people all over in remote places in this world that are connecting with people who have somewhat similar thoughts and all, and didn't know that, you know, I've had emails come to me over many years ago saying, like, I live in, you know, I've gotten them from, oh my goodness, I got them from Iran. I got them from, I got one from Mongolia once. I didn't even know they had internet there. I got these emails from these Philippines, all these weird places that either all their relatives were into some other religion that they just couldn't handle, didn't accept, or no religion at all, was very atheistic, or they were just alone, and they were all suddenly gravitating toward this, like, Torah stuff, and they didn't know why or what to think of it. And it was like, wow, this is like the Close Encounters movie. Like, all these people are getting zapped all around the world, and so that's what's a wonderful thing, is to have these Facebook groups and, you know, Messenger and the Zoom rooms and all these things. So all right, so that's the bit of the background, just to understand that behind the Matrix movie, first of all, there is a structure, you know, the Matrix world, the programs that are in between, and then the world of the Oracle, which is kind of a neat figure, and we'll get to her in more detail. Architect is the creator, but not the creator. The creator with a small T-H-E, not the creator. And we get a video on that too in a second. So we'll take an actual break in about 5 minutes or so, 5 to 10, so people can get a drink and pose some more questions. But for now, I'm going to move on. We're still just a couple more slides. This is kind of a very basic ideas about what are called the Sefirot, okay? And these are just emanations. The word has some, in its root, has something to do with communication, actually. So these are just emanations of God that are within creation, kind of like a trace image, you know, something in creation that we reflects the creator. And that's throughout nature, but it's especially important with regard to human events, human beings and human events. And so to understand clearly, you know, it's not like there's 10 gods here, or Trinity becomes a deca something. No, these are just ways that God relates to creation, and we can relate to God through these aspects or attributes. They're called different things. You'll see words like emanation, Sefirot, midot, attributes, etc. They're used somewhat interchangeably in textbooks, and I use them interchangeably on the Matrix site too. So none of these are God, and you should never try to parse God into any kind of sections or pieces. That's actually technically what blasphemy is creating a division in the unity of God. As I mentioned earlier, the true essence aspect, the true essence of God is that which is outside of our ability to understand. It's outside of existence. Existence, as we understand it, is part of something God created, you could say. Although what technically creation comes, starting with Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and about halfway through that verse, where it says, "And He created." And up to that point, as I mentioned, there's something else. So as I said, I think I said it a second ago, the Sefirot are emanations or lights or vessels, is different words, again, used for these things through which God interacts with and relates to creation. I need to move one of my little windows out of the way here. Oops. And the Sefirot, as I mentioned earlier, there's these different worlds of existence, and there's this pattern of the Sefirot are within each one of these, and they are what animates these worlds. They are what animates us as human beings. Our physical, emotional, and intellectual selves can be understood along the path, this map of these Sefirot. Oops, close the window, I didn't mean to close. Here we go. Down the bottom left here, this is an important one. I put it in yellow so I wouldn't forget. Events that transpire in the world or various divine commandments in the Torah are classified and described in terms of their various modes, the Sefirot, various modes of interaction. That's the Kabbalistic view. So everything that you see, people represent the Sefirot, their interactions represent interactions between these Sefirot. That's how the basic Kabbalistic mindset, if you will, when reading these stories and commandments and things in the Torah. That's important to us because that's what's going on in the Matrix here. These characters in the Matrix movie also at different times reflect certain Sefirot, or one or more Sefirot. And Sefirot's plural, by the way. Sephirah is singular. So that's an important one to remember. That'll come up again shortly. The other thing with the Sefirot, besides just being distinct emanations, is that when they themselves individually, but also when they work together, when they interact, create something specific. So, okay, for example, right now, some of us are doing what's called the Omer Count between Pesach, Passover, and Shavuot. 49 days. We take these, the lower 7 Sefirot, and each of the 7 has all 7 within it, so there's 49. And you look at when you bring them together, let's say a mercy and judgment, well, you look at perhaps the concept of mercy within judgment. What does that tell you? So it's a way of understanding God better, how God deals with us and also ourselves. So that's the whole point of the Omer Count, is learning more about all of those things. But that's just one example. Also, sometimes, of course, you have a pairing, but sometimes you also have what's called triads. So you'll have, and we're going to cover that in just a couple minutes. You'll have a Sephirah on the left, one on the right, and one in the middle. You'll see that scheme in a minute, and that forms 3 of them called a triad, and the triad has specific properties as well. And then you have something called Partsifim, which is a fancy way of saying persona. So when you talk about God in terms of Abba, Father, right? That's an idea of a persona, something we can relate to like that, almost not human, but like using human terminology. Same with, I'm gonna let someone in here. Same with the Shekhinah, the divine presence, which is feminine and considered either being the daughter or the bride, depending on context. That's why a Shir HaShirim, Song of Solomon, is confusing at times, because it sounds like he's speaking of his sister and his bride, which sounds a little bit off, but and it does say that, but he's talking about the Shekhinah, as this is one interpretation, talking about the Shekhinah in either or role of being the daughter to the king, which is obviously the sister to her brother, or the bride to the groom. So it depends on what's being said in the text. So you have that idea. You also have that's one example of a feminine dimension of God. The Shekhinah is feminine. a lot of things relating to this world we live in are considered feminine. Malkut, which is the last of the 10 Sefirot, kingdom, is a feminine term. Torah, feminine term. The bride, of course, is. I'm trying to think what else. And Ruach HaKodesh. So there's a funny thing here is Holy Spirit is feminine and somewhat synonymous in many places, at least starting in the Second Temple period, with Shekhinah. So the Shekhinah is the presence of God in you. So is the Ruach HaKodesh, right? It's the presence of God in you. So it's kind of funny that it's Holy Spirit's called a he or masculine in Christianity, but that's completely off from Judaism, which is one of the funny lines in the Matrix movie, because when Neo first meets Trinity, if you recall, they're at the nightclub. You've seen the movie, and her name's Trinity, and she represents the Shekhinah, the divine presence that he first connects with. And he looks at her and he goes, "I thought you were a guy," and she says, "Most guys do," because it was all done electronically, you know. So it was like a wrong assumption, man. It's kind of funny that should come up in the movie, but it does. So anyhow, the Sefirot, the main point here in that block is that they are used to construct different frameworks within the framework. Okay, so all right, so one more thing here, and then we'll take a little water break, and then we'll get into the Sefirot in the movie. Okay. So I mentioned them in general, that these are emanations of God, or vessels or lights. It's not just it's both the vessel for the light and the light itself. So when you're talking about like the Sephirah of Gevurah means judgment, okay? Well, it has a lot of meanings. All of these things, by the way, have multiple meanings depending on context too. And sometimes they're masculine, sometimes they're feminine, but there tends to be general themes with these things. So we'll cover the exceptions and all. But there's always 10 when we're talking about it. Here's the simplest way to put this. When we're talking about it from the point of how they came into being, or from God's perspective, if you will, we start at Keter at the top, which is crown, and work our way down. And this is how God relates to the world, both in how he created everything, and also, how God relates it through all the different worlds of existence. So you begin with Keter, and then if you're talking about our path back up to God, you go down, start at Malkut at the bottom, the matrix world, if you will, and we're going back up toward God. Generally speaking, we don't generally refer to Keter in that scheme. The manifestation of Keter in existence, that's one way to put it, is called knowledge da'at. No, this has the implication of connecting, actually. Da'at, throughout the Torah, you'll see the word da'at. Adam knew his wife Hada'at. Daniel 12:4, he says knowledge will increase in the end of days, same word, da'at. So when it's talking about something we're doing, it usually da'at comes into the scheme and Keter is left out. But there's always 10. But the general diagram looks more like this, okay? There are horizontal and vertical dimensions, okay? That's pretty visible, as you see. You have a group of 3 down the left side, a group of 3 down the right side, and a group of 4 down the middle, okay? And the general concept here is that one side is the side of like expansion, like a force, and then that has to be countered by a side of restriction, which is on the left. And then the middle is considered the column, or the path of balance between the two. For now, let's just call it that. So that's the first concept, that there's a right, left, and center, and they have the basic properties of expansion, constriction, and balance. Pretty simple, but it comes into play throughout the Bible, throughout the Tanakh, it comes into play. And then you have the concept, of course, vertical, which is Malkut at the bottom, is more related to our existence, our world. Keter, way at the top, it means crown, so it's not even part of the body, like you think of a crown above the body, because the other Sefirot are actually all related to body parts in terms of understanding them. So Keter is above all of that, and it serves as like a buffer to the true essence of God, even further beyond Keter. So there's the vertical idea, and we're going to talk about that. as well. And then masculine and feminine are generally associated. Well, if you look on left to right, the right side, which is expansive, proactive, is considered in the literature as being the masculine. This is not gender or boy, girl, nothing like that. It's just a term. And then the more receptive or restrictive or reactive side on the left is the feminine. So you need both, right? Like if you're going to pour yourself a cup of water, you know, the act of pouring the water in is from the right side, and then the act of saying, I think I should stop pouring the water now, it's going to flow over the edge of the cup, that's the left side. So that's that dynamic, that masculine and feminine dynamic runs through the entire Bible from one end to the other. You see it constantly in different forms, but that's the way this world is set up by Hashem. So when the Sefirot do connect and relate to each other in different ways, that teaches us something. For example, I think it was yesterday, right? The Omer Count was, it was the 37th or 38th day. It was the one that was Tiferet in Yesod. Tiferet is associated with Jacob and Yesod with Joseph. So they have an interesting dynamic, father and son, in the Torah that relates to what those two attributes are all about. Tiferet is all about truth, for one thing. It's the central one right in the middle there, everything coming together. And Tiferet is said to be between Chesed and Gevurah. That's Jacob between Abraham and Isaac. And it's also between the lower feminine Malkut and the upper feminine Bina, which are Rachel and Leah, the two wives, so that's Jacob. And then Joseph is at Yesod, which is the concept of synergy and connectivity. And so when you put those two things together, all that truth of Jacob and the connection of Joseph, there's a lot of things to contemplate there. And that's why it's a nice reference tool to have the understanding of the Sefirot and the tree. This is called the tree of life diagram, is what it's called here, to help understand how some of these concepts interrelate. It's just a good way of what a template is. A template is there to help you understand something in a visual sense, for one. So this, just very briefly, this group of 10 is broken up into, first broken up into two groups, and the upper three, which are mostly outside of our day-to-day reality, Bina, Chochmah, Keter. And then you have a group of 6 below that, and then the 7th one by itself at Malkut. That group of 6 in the middle is called by different names. Bina, by the way, Chochmah, Bina are called Abba and Ima, father and mother. And the group of 6 in the middle is actually called Ben, is the son. And the one below it, Malkut, is either called the Nukveh, the female, or the bride, Kala, the bride. And that whole relationship of bride and groom, a spiritual or divine bride and groom that you see in a lot of text is based on this right here. And of course, a lot more to it. We're just highlighting a few things tonight. And then even within the group of 6, there's a minor division where there's 3 upper ones and 3 lower ones. The 3 upper ones tend to be a little bit more cerebral, looking back to where they came from above, and the lower 3 of that set tend to be more of how we put things into action, down into the Malkut, the actual world of action. So they all work together like that. So it's a neat system, if you think of it like that's what it is. It's a system of how we think, a system of our emotions, it's a system of physicality, things in this world. And there's all kinds of examples we'll talk about later. And as I said earlier, this group of Sefirot, this group of 10 Sefirot, are in each of the worlds of existence. So within our physical world, the Sefirot are here and function and sustain and give this world life. The angelic world, same thing. The heavenly is above that. And then within those 3 worlds of creation, each are, they're like the building blocks, if you will, the functional building blocks for each of these worlds of existence. Of course, it's a little bit different in each world, because each world works, there's a big difference between our world and the angelic world. There's an even bigger difference between the angelic world and the world of creation, the heavenly realm above that. The gaps get bigger. So that's why we're called the world of concealment down here, because we're down deep, and our job is to go get back to the source. That's the the theme for the Matrix, right? That Neo starts in the bottom, really the bottom, that nasty nightclub. He meets Trinity at the lowest place in the Matrix, some strange nightclub is where they meet. And like, it's like, where are you going to find God in this world? You'll be surprised. It may be where at your lowest, and that's where God meets you. And so this aspect of God, Shekhinah, is what she represents in that particular scene. One thing going forward, it's not like each character represents one of these Sefirot. You'll see, like, I'll talk about Trinity right here with regard to Malkut and the Shekhinah and all of that. Yes, but there's Morpheus as the Zadik I mentioned earlier, but just like all of us, we have every person has the entire structure within us, but we're all very different because some of us lean more one way, some lean more another way, and that's fine. That's a good way how God made us all individuals, but we're still all made on this structure. This is basically the image of God. When you see in Genesis, male and female, he made them in the image of God. It's not to, it actually is said in some texts that the image of God is the Sefirot. This is, as well as the worlds of existence, or we have a physical world, a physical part of our body, of our life. We have an emotional part of our life, and we have an intellectual part of our life. And those correspond to those three lower worlds in Jacob's dream. That's also in Deuteronomy 6:5. And after the Shema, you have the beginning of the Hafta, and it says, you will love the Lord your God with what? With those three things, with your strength, not in this order, but your strength, your heart, and your intellect. So that's what that verse 6:5 in Deuteronomy is based on, the same thing here, which again parallels the three levels of the soul we mentioned earlier. These things all parallel each other. So you can put them on charts like I love to do and just look across and see how these things line up. And we're going to use the Matrix movie to show how they do line up. So I think for now, if you want to learn more about, I think I had a link here. I got to move something out of the way here because I'm blocking my own view. Oh, yeah, I'm here. Okay. I'm going to just go back one here. Nope, wrong way. Here it is. Oh, down at the bottom of this page. So this will be, I'll post this in the group, but just to show you, if you want to learn more about the Sefirot in detail, especially, and also the worlds of existence, you can go out and buy all kinds of books and sign up for courses if you got money. But if you like free stuff like me, you have Aish.com is the one I actually recommend the most because I just like the way it's set up. I'm going to click on the link here and see if it takes us there, and hopefully it will. Yeah. So this is over on Aish.com, very kosher source. And over, under, oh, I think I'm on the page, right? Yeah, it's on the spirituality section, which I already took us to. And there it is, Kabbalah 101 on the right. So if you go here to this link, it's a course. It's like, it's all short articles. It's nicely structured. So that's really a good resource. And then Chabad also has a Kabbalah course. And if that's more your speed or you like Chabad, they have, this is the section on the Sefirot. So there's a lot more to it, but this is the section on that. So I forgot to click on those links. So there we go. So this will be in the presentation, which I'll post this thing online, but I'll also put the links separately so you can just click on them later too. Okay, so I think we might be at the stage here where we're going to take just a short break. If someone wants to, oh, thank you, David. Yeah, so he's got them posted there. I'll also post them in our group on Facebook, so they'll be there permanently, along with a link to this recording once it's done. Probably, what's tomorrow's going into Shabbat. I might not get to it till Sunday. So by Sunday night, hopefully, everything will be up in the group. So I'm kind of busy from now until and through Shabbat. So, all right. So let's pause for a second to get a drink or get your favorite chocolate chip cookie. We'll pause like 2 minutes. And if someone wants to stick around, if you have something you wanted to, did I miss anything yet? No. If you had a comment or question related to anything we covered so far or whatever, it's not a big deal. If it's too much right now, I'll promise to address it later or at the end of the night or something. What was it, Jillian? Yeah, Jillian used the word, higher consciousness. Yeah, this is real interesting how much relationship there is between when you get into the higher, the world of Berea and you get into the level of the oracle, and you get into the Bina on the Sephirotic tree of life diagram. When you get out, to that highest level of creation as a human being, and then you start go outside of creation into the realm of existence, if you will. As I said, we're the collective consciousness level. There was a movie. Oh, what was it called? This is kind of a real segue here. Okay, make sure my mic's working. So there was a movie years ago. Anyone ever see Beverly Hills Ninja with Chris Farley? Okay, yeah, it's a comedy movie, ridiculous. But there's a scene where he's with his sensei, and they're in the class. He's the only Anglo in there, and he's sitting in there in his in his whatever he was wearing, kimono or whatever. And he was like, they're going to go out into the world. And he says, but sensei, I feel I don't have confidence, when I'm out there alone, I feel like I don't have the support of the group. And the sensei shows him, there's a scene where the whole group elevates up into the skies mystically. And he says, you can always come to this level and connect with everyone in our group. It's like and I'm like, wow, that's exactly it. That's exactly the level of collective consciousness, the fourth level of the soul, the fourth level, of the worlds of existence that's outside creation. That's where all the souls of Israel and all God followers, when I say Israel, connect at that level. Okay. And anyhow, you can thank Chris Farley for that vague reference, but it's a cute scene, but it depicts this perfectly, and I got a kick out of that one. Let's see here. So just a couple things while people are getting their drinks. So as I mentioned on that tree of life diagram that we were looking at, oops, wrong way, go back. Yeah, over here, right? Yeah. So I mentioned you can look at this from the top down or the bottom up. I mentioned generally top down, we talk about Keter, but even bottom up, we can talk about Keter. Really depends more in context. But this is, like I said, this is how God created things, but also relates down into I say down, down into creation toward us. But going back to God to return, but we're really returning to the image of God, to our true self. That's the true definition of teshuvah. It means to return, or return to yourself, or return to your true self. So what is your true self based on? It's based on these Sefirot, on these emanations of God, right? We're made in the image of God. What does that mean? Well, it means God's characteristics. Well, what are those? Those are the Sefirot. So to return, to do teshuvah, is really to return back to your true self based on this model, what you're looking at right here. Interesting thought I had when we were doing Parsha Lech Lecha, right? There's a Parsha, a section of weekly Torah reading where Abraham is told by God to go. Lech Lecha is actually more literally translated as go to yourself. It's like, go exactly what we're talking about here. Go back to your true self, Abraham. And traditionally, what happens to Abraham after this? He goes through a series of 10 tests. And those 10 tests, Kabbalistically, are related to the 10 Sefirot. So Lech Lecha, next time you read Lech Lecha comes around, you're going to have this on your mind now that it's Abraham returning to his true self based on the 10 Sefirot, and that's the 10 tests that he gets in the Torah. It's kind of interesting how that, at least that's my take on it. I kind of just, it's probably crazy, but the first part, but that's what I think about it. Okay, so all right, you got a lot of detailed questions here that let's see here. Why Oracle depends on the Zion people? Depends. Oh, that almost goes to Elisheva's question last week. Does God need us? Well, she does say we do it together. I mean, there's a relationship between God and the people and his Torah, right? God and Israel and his Torah are one. And there's an aspect of God, Bina, that the Oracle represents. We'll get more into that in a minute. So in that sense, they're all in it together. The guard of the Oracle, that's the Seraph. Seraph is the figure in the second movie, and there's a reason it only appears in the second movie, that Neo has to sort of fight in order to connect with the Oracle. And oh, by the way, what does he say? He says, you don't know someone. That's da'at, remember? Know, knowledge, da'at. You don't know someone until you fight them, until you connect with them. So that's an interesting play on the concept in the English and Hebrew words there, that he has to have this interaction with this angelic figure called Seraph, and the Seraphim are the highest levels of these type of, Seraphim are actually considered to be like above the world of angels. They're actually considered more to be in the world of Berea. So that's why he appears as when Neo sees him, he looks like a fiery being. It's what a seraph is. It's a fiery being, you know. So that's a lot of detail stuff we'll get to later. And if you go on Matrix4Humans.com, it's all there. I have a whole page just on Seraph. I have a page on all the major characters except for one, that being Neo, because everything applies to Neo. So someone asked me once, how come you don't have a page on Neo of all things? I go, because everything's about Neo. Everything's part of Neo. I don't know if any of you did the Ushpizin movie conference we have in the fall. Similar idea. There's a main character, Moshe Balanya, in the middle, and all the other characters represent aspects of him, etc., and themselves. It's very much identical to the Matrix movie in that respect. So, okay, I need to get a sip of, I think I'm going to do vitamin water here because I had enough coffee. I have my assistant with me. Lily has crawled up onto my lap. Hopefully she won't start barking into the microphone because all your ears will bleed. All right. So I'll gladly get into some more of the weird specific questions later so we don't get too far off here. Like I said, all this stuff is somewhere on the Matrix4Humans website and more to come. But we've got about 50 articles there, and now we have about 21 blog entries. So what I did on the site is there's a knowledge base of articles on all the topics and characters, but then there's this section called the blogs, and I got 3 blogs, and they come from character perspectives. It's my imagination, of course, but one is Morpheus, one is the Oracle, and one is Ramachandra. The Oracle is giving you things from the left side, Morpheus is giving you things from the right side, Ramachandra is giving you things from the center. So that's where their perspectives come from, and there's about 21 blog entries. And that's where I get a little bit more speculative in terms of where the 4th movie is going, especially Ramachandra. He tends to shoot his mouth off. So, so we could talk about the 4th movie later too. All right. Well, in some respects, you gotta be careful with that. There's a, you know, and I don't mean to put anyone down, but you know, how Judaism views things connecting to Mashiach and how Christianity views things connecting to Jesus are very, very different. And that's not making comment on anything else but that, just very different. The concept of Messiah is like foundational to everything about the word Messiah, Mashiach in Judaism. The concept of Messiah practically doesn't exist in Christianity. It's just like they read the New Testament, some things about Jesus, and you know, that's it. There's like 99.99999% of what there is to learn isn't discussed in the New Testament. It's found in Jewish oral Torah. That's where everything is found. And that's what the New Testament is based on. Whether you agree with it or not, it's a different matter, but that's what it bases itself on, clearly. And the Matrix movie reflects, obviously, a lot of all those things. But we go a lot deeper. There was a lot of messages over the years. There's been all kinds of groups and blogs about the Matrix more than any movie in history. Of course, the biggest one was, oh, it's like a Messiah figure like Jesus. And then you had other groups saying, oh, no, it's more Buddhist, and other groups saying it's Greek philosophy, French philosophy. Oh, no, it's psychology. It's like all of these things. If you read the very first article in the knowledge base on Matrix4Humans, I address all of that. It's all little bits and parts of all that stuff, but it's like all the blind men and the elephant story. You know, the blind men had never heard of an elephant, so they were let into a room. Each one touched a different part of the elephant. They all came back in the room and described what an elephant was. And one said, well, it's like, you know, he described a trunk, another described the tusk, another described the leg and the tail, the belly. It's like everyone had a little piece of the puzzle, but nobody really knew what the elephant really was. So, all right, let us now enter the Matrix. One of my favorite scenes here, where Neo goes from his first experience of after taking the red pill. The red is associated with the left side of judgment, which is the side of restriction, as I mentioned. Anytime you advance spiritually, you need to make room for what it is God wants to show you. So you literally, there's a concept called tzimtzum, which is constriction or restriction, either one. and you're making room for the new reality to come in. You gotta get something out of the hard drive and make some space for the new to come in, and so you can start, you know, heading in that direction. And that's a continual process. So the whole idea of him taking the red pill is where he starts to push out the reality. And this scene is beautiful because you see how, you know, he thought that was his fingers and his hands and his arms, and all of a sudden he's looking at this stuff that's coming over his flesh and bones here, and it's like, whoa, you know, this is part of the Tzimtzum process for Neo here. Yeah, don't take pills from. Yeah, Neo goes with some strangers in a car in the middle of the night, some building, and takes drugs from a man he's never met before. It is kind of a bad message for little kids, but hopefully it's meant to be an adult film. um so anyhow, but this is cool scene here. This is a good Tzimtzum image here of him, you know, the process starting to take shape where he's like, what's going on here? And you can see his reality in his mind is starting to change. Okay, let's see here, where do we go next? Okay, oh, Keter. So we're going to go at the top here for a minute. So in the Matrix, so as I mentioned, you have the levels of existence or worlds of existence, and you also have the Sefirot in each one. Now I'm going to throw a curveball at you. There are certain, I got my head of video department is behind me yelling. Asher. I told him he's the cat in the movie, and ever since then, you know. So some of the Sefirot also have particular relationships with these different worlds of existence. And this goes to that idea I mentioned earlier, how some of them also relate to something else or in combination. So you'll see it here. So Keter has, as I said, all the Sefirot in every world, but Keter, especially because it's a crown and up beyond the body, beyond, it connects with the idea of that hidden fifth world. It's a buffer between us and the real true essence of God. Chokmah on the right there, where you see architect. I don't know if you can see that big enough, but the top right there, architect. Chokmah means wisdom, but not in the sense that we normally think of just being a smart person, but it means something different in Kabbalah. Chokmah relates to that fourth world of Atzilut, outside of creation, but within existence. And then Bina on the left, where you see oracle, Bina relates to the highest world of creation, Buriah. So there's, you'll see as it gets explained what that means. Then that whole next group of six, all six of them together as a unit, relate to the world of the angelic world or the program world in the Matrix. And also that's also the world of the sun, S-O-N. It's also the world of the sun, S-U-N, because Tiferet resembles the sun in Kabbalistic text. It's also very much the path of Teshuvah is really a lot has to do with, I call it fix the six. Those six attributes are the ones that we really work on specifically and bring down into Malkut. This, by the way, is identical to Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. 7 habits, 6 you work on, bring it every day down to the 7th. It's exactly the same. It's really amazing. And then the bottom one is, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, Malkut Trinity. And the daughter or bride. But anyhow, back up to Keter here, okay? Keter is the idea of beyond the Matrix world. It's related to what's called the source in the movie, but that's, of course, like anything else, it's more complicated than that. Neo gets to the source, but he only gets to the, if you will, the outer dimension, if you will, of the source, the outer dimension of infinity that's touching or facing finiteness, you know? And there's something even further beyond, as you get the hint in the last movie, because his body gets dragged in toward that skull he talks to. I think I have the video clip for this here. I have a video clip at the bottom. I'm trying to remember which. Oh, I know what that is. Hold on. The only non-Matrix video clip is at the bottom in a minute. So this is the idea of the true creative force, the true creator that actually creates, the architect, who calls himself the creator because he's the creator of creation below him. So this kind of corresponds to as I mentioned, Genesis 1, where you see Elohim created the heavens and the earth. This is true, but Elohim is not the highest aspect of God we can consider. There's something beyond what we can consider. Nonetheless, Elohim would correspond to the architect, who's the creator. But there's something out of sight and even beyond. And as I said, the characters in the movie don't even really know what the source is. They just have an idea there's something out there called the source that Neo has to connect to somehow. All right. And ironically, or interestingly, the concept of Keter is related to something called Ein Sof, which is related to this idea of the infinite God. That's still an aspect we can grasp. And part of Ein Sof has different aspects to it, which I think Elisheva will get to in one of her rooms in the near future. But part of the concept of Ein Sof is actually the skull called Golgotha. And of course, Neo at the end finds himself face to face with this giant skull-like image, which is exactly what should be there. If this movie is built on Kabbalah, he should end up facing this skull, and he does. so it's so keep in mind the source is still not God in pure essence, but it's getting very close. It's getting closer. It's God outside of existence that we can know there's something there, but even that, it's not. You can't just say, well, that's God. It's certainly of much deeper aspect that we can barely understand. But in the movie, the architect is a program, and he was created by the machine world. And we'll get to that at some other time, actually. That gets into some very advanced Hasidic thought that she's going to cover in the near future. Yeah, you are. Yeah, the giant baby face. The giant baby face, I was just saying, that's the skull. That's Golgotha. That's like the skull image, the head image. It's actually a head. As if you look at some of the imagery from the storyboards and things from the movie, that outside the movie, if you can find those on the internet, you'll see it's actually a skull. It's actually a head, not just a face image. It's three-dimensional. So regarding this idea that there's God that we can sort of relate to, that created everything, but there's something beyond that, I'm going to play you a 3-minute clip here, 3-minute video. I'll turn up your volume a little bit. This is Professor Daniel Matt. Daniel Matt is a very brilliant researcher and writer. He recently completed, I think it was an 18-year project. He took the Zohar, the entire massive mystical text called the Zohar in Aramaic, not only translated it into English, but put like insane amounts of references and footnotes explaining it. And it's a 12-volume set. So if you got like $700 in your pocket to blow, there you go. But it's quite a work. He's on Facebook, by the way. So this is him for 3 minutes, briefly explaining, if you can call that an explanation, in 3 minutes of the idea of God that we can sort of understand from Genesis, and that there's something even beyond, okay? This is actually called In the Beginning, God Created God, which sounds really crazy, but you got to listen to this, all right? So turn up your, cat going crazy here. Turn up your volume here, and I'm going to play this for y'all, okay? Hold on a second. I want to make sure that I want to make sure I have the volume. I got to rewind this for you guys. Give me a second here while I stop messing this up. Okay. Hold on, please. Bring it back to the beginning. And I got to find you guys to make sure you. I'll try just not to talk during this. I don't want to have to mess with the mute button. But I have to hit share, and I want to hit the video. Oh, yeah, it does say share sound. Okay, good. All right, here we go.
Bereshit bara Elohim. This is so common. Okay, even people who know hardly anything know this. Perhaps many of you know it in Hebrew. Even those of you who don't know Hebrew may be familiar with these words. Bereshit bara Elohim. Okay, as we learned before, it's interesting that the Torah begins with bet and not with aleph. But I want to focus on something else here. What does this phrase mean? Notice I didn't even put the whole verse. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. We're leaving heaven and earth aside for now. Okay, just focusing on the first 3 words of the Torah. Bereshit bara Elohim. That means, of course, in the beginning, God created. But what does the Hebrew actually say? Bereshit, in the beginning, bara, created, Elohim, God. That's how the Zohar reads the verse. In the beginning, it created God. That's startling. That is the Zohar's commentary on the first pasuk of the entire Torah. Right there, you see why the Zohar was hidden. Right there, you understand what all those restrictions about studying Kabbalah. How can the Zohar say that the Torah begins by saying that God was created? That sounds crazy. That sounds heretical. In the beginning, God created. No, the Zohar says, in the beginning, something created God. Now, this isn't atheism. This isn't a put down of God. This is saying there's something greater about God than what we call God. So who is the subject of Bereshit bara Elohim? It's not Elohim. Elohim is the object. Now, of course, in Hebrew, the object can come after the verb. Certainly, the simple meaning of this verse is, in the beginning, Elohim created. There's no doubt. But the Zohar says, no, let's read it hyper-literally. I would call this hyper-literalism. The Zohar says, you want to read the Torah literally? Look at it really literally. In the beginning, it created Elohim. So who is the subject? The subject is the unnameable, Ayin or Ein Sof, the God, what the great one mystic is called the God beyond God. So Ein Sof is certainly the subject, but Elohim, I think this is the Zohar's way of saying what we think of as God, that's a very puny understanding of God. So the Zohar is constantly challenging human theological systems, human theological beliefs.
Okay, testing. There we go. So that was interesting, and this relates directly. So this is the Kabbalistic view that yes, there's a concept of God that we can talk about, relate to, pray to, read about, write about, et cetera, that we can have some ideas about. But then there's something that where His ways are not our ways. That there's something else about God that we do not connect to, do not relate to, and it could be like Ein Sof, or Ein Sof could be like the gateway to what all that means. But we have to keep that in mind because it does clear up and form the foundation for a lot of other important teachings, etc. As you get into, and again, not putting anyone down, just saying, but if you get into Christianity, generally speaking, the highest thought about God, what God is kind of what, it's like our Father in heaven. It don't get no higher than that. And Judaism says, well, our Father in heaven is a persona. It's one of those Partsuf we talked about. It's a way of us trying to understand something about God, but it's not the highest level of God. It is something beyond, always something beyond. So just something to keep in mind. It does relate very well to the Matrix movie because you do have the architect as the creator, but you do have something beyond that whole program Matrix world. There's something beyond all of those four worlds of existence in the story. And we see a little bit of it touched on only at the end of the third movie when Neo does finally get to make some type of contact with that level of beyond existence. And it's a big mystery. The movie leaves us hanging for 18 years now. It's left us hanging because there was no end. The Matrix didn't revert back. There was no end to the war. It's just a temporary peace. And everyone's like knew there had to be another movie. And we've been waiting 18 years for that, which is really amazing because, and if you go up on the Matrix4Humans site, I dedicated several articles to this, the concept of redemption for human beings in our existence, the concept of redemption in the Matrix movie follow the same pattern. There is an initial phase to the redemption process. And then there is a gap of time where people even wonder what's going on. And then at the end comes the final redemption, part of the redemption process. That's the process as outlined in Kabbalistic texts. And I've got that mentioned as well. And it's exactly what the Matrix is doing to us, which is just rather remarkable. The idea that prophecy being another form of control is one of these Matrix no one understood what happened. Well, clearly there was references to that in the movie, and the Matrix does this all through it. All the characters get it wrong throughout, continually, because they always see but partially, right? No one has that perfect view. And the idea of, the prophecy, uniform control. Well, okay, that's a cool theory that, you know, kind of sort of gives an explanation to this. But if the Matrix story continues as it has through dozens, if not, I should say, sorry, hundreds of very precise Kabbalistic concepts that have it's nailed every one of them through all three movies. And like I said, if you go up on the Matrix4Humans site, you will see what I mean. There's hundreds of these ideas and how they interrelate. They're not independent. It's like, this is absolutely a Kabbalah course, the Matrix movie. And that being the case, no, the prophecy, because people don't understand that it has an initial minor fulfillment, and there's a reason for that with Neo and what he accomplished and connecting to the source and making that light connection where he drew down some of that light into the matrix that touched everyone and everything in the matrix. There's a change for something yet to come. That had to be done first. And now there's an interim period. There's a reason for the interim period. I'm forgetting all of the Hebrew terms. Pekida is blanking out here. That's the initial Pekida and Sefirot, yeah, the first and final part. So there's two parts to the prophecy, and people they just didn't grab. What do the oracles say? Remember, you can't see past the choices you don't understand. So that's not a choice for people to understand, because they don't know that the matrix is absolutely grounded in these Kabbalistic ideas. You have a small fulfillment, a gap, and then the big fulfillment at the end. So this is what's going on. This is what's going to happen. The big fulfillment, which involves another Kabbalistic concept called arousal from below, has to happen. Neo doesn't just do it for everybody. Yay, it's all, thank you, Neo, it's all done. No, the whole point, here's the big secret to the matrix, okay? This is being recorded, right? I've already put it on the website. It's on Ramakandra's blog. The matrix ultimately is just like our existence. There's a purpose to this, you know? Adam got kicked out of the garden and was told, you got work to do. That's what the matrix is. The human beings, the backstory had become completely terrible. They'd enslaved the machine world, and it would have eventually led to the destruction of humanity, the direction they were heading in. The fact that the humans are in the matrix is the best thing and the only thing that could have happened to them to save them. And the matrix existence is where people have the opportunity to escape self-centeredness and materialism, and those are the ones that get out so far, okay? But a lot of people are still trapped in that. And so it's serving that purpose. The matrix, the same as our existence, serves what we're here for. And the whole concept in Judaism called elevating the sparks, which is what we're here to do, to find these things in creation and lift them back up to God and put everything back together. That's what the matrix is about too. And you're going to see that in the fourth movie, because you will. I'm going to end it there. This is my prediction based on the Zohar and other texts. Yes, exactly. I'm getting Raz behind me here. Hold on, let me close this window. All right, so I'm getting off on a rant here, but I do have a section on the website. There's a new section in the knowledge base called Matrix4 articles, which are, I guess you could I call them explanatory. You could call them predictive, but they're explanatory. I'm explaining where I believe the fourth movie is going and why. So, and as they say in stocks, past performance is no indication of future performance, or whatever that line is. That's not the case here. If it's followed everything perfectly so far, I'm going to guess it's going to continue to follow that path. Anyhow, back to our slideshow here. Gotta find my way back to okay. Let me make sure I share screen here. Hold on. Okay, PDF. Boom. Okay, everybody see Keter here? We saw that video. All right, so we're going to move down from Keter, which is associated with the source and outside of the program world and everything, to everybody's character everybody found very mundane and boring. You know this guy. Nice photo, though, huh? Everybody see our gentleman here, the architect? So make sure it's on your screen. Okay, so the architect is associated with this level of this Sefirot of Chokhmah, wisdom. Not that he's wise, but it's what he represents. He's the father of the matrix. Chokhmah is on the Kabbalistic tree is called Abba, or father. Okay, Chokhmah in the Torah, in Kabbalistic text, comes from nothingness. It comes from Keter, which is beyond, right? It's considered nothingness. So he comes from he doesn't even know. Like I said, these characters don't even know what the source really is. In fact, everything he says about the source is very predictable and boring and wrong in the case of Neo. But he comes from that nothingness. Same thing there. That's a verse out of the book of Job, by the way. Wisdom comes from Ayin, from nothing. All right. He is the beginning of existence, right? Existence is the program world down through the oracle and the program world and the matrix world. He represents the light of Ein Sof. So Ein Sof would be associated with Keter. That means without end. And then is the light of or Ein Sof that comes into existence. So he represents or Ein Sof at that level. And you'll see that light in the movie. The other thing about him, if you remember his little apartment there, whatever you want to call it, he had all these movie screens all connected together. It's interesting. He'd show all of these different dimensions on the screen. They'd all show the same thing. That's that same idea of what Chokhmah is, or that world is like all of these things are within one. So like the correlation scientifically would be like before the Big Bang, you had everything in that one point, and then boom, the Big Bang. So he's that one point with everything in it, an echad, a unity of everything in there, right? And of course, he's very single-minded, which is his criticism he gets from the Oracle, which we're in the middle of writing an article on that right now too, because there's a lot in those dialogues in the Matrix, especially the 3 dialogues the Oracle has with Neo. And she talks about her relationship with him, which we're going to talk about right here in a minute. He's the father and she's the mother, and how they work together. So he's that from the right side, which we said was very proactive, very expansive, no differentiation, just go, 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 let's create. And he fails, as he says in the movie. He failed more than once, and he needed something that could handle that situation, something that could handle the idea of differentiation, which is Bina on the left side, the Oracle, and something that could relate to the existence of the human beings below, which is, again, Bina. She's considered the mother of the children. Strange, interesting New Testament verse in Galatians where Paul says Jerusalem above is free and mother to us all. Jerusalem above is another, I guess, cognomen, a code name, whatever you call it. This is Jerusalem below, Malkut, Jerusalem above, Bina. Bina is also associated with Shavuot and the 50th and freedom. And Bina is also associated with mother to us all. All 3 Kabbalistic terms are in that one verse in Galatians. It's kind of interesting. He is very past-oriented. She's very future-oriented. They both discuss that. All of these qualities about the architect are exactly what Chokhmah is. It's that single point of light. Somebody just mentioned that, right? Was that Luke? Hold on. Scroll up here real quick. I don't want to get too far off the trail with some of these things. Okay. All right. So what we're going to see, what's interesting, and we showed this last 2 months ago when we showed the Worlds of Existence, that at the beginning of the second movie, Matrix Reloaded, at the very beginning, where you first see the word Matrix appear on the screen real big and the code starts coming down, you actually see imagery of the 4 worlds of existence. So the code comes out of nowhere, first of all. So that's that aspect. And then there's this, it forms into a single dot, into a single point of light, which is this level of Atzilut or Chokhmah. And then it explodes, which is the next phase of Bina and expansion. And then it starts to come down and form. That's the world of formation. And then finally it's made into a time clock that actually show the 4 worlds and the hidden 5th world at the beginning of Matrix Reloaded. You can't miss it. You can look at it later if you want to stick around. I still got it queued up somewhere. So I'm going to show you a brief clip here. Again, this is from the movie, only a couple minutes long. And this is where Neo makes his connection to the architect. That whole concept of a singularity and everything in it at Chokhmah is very important here. As I said, they show it in the terms of creation at the beginning of the second movie. And then here in this scene, when Neo goes from his reality into the next world of the architect, you'll see that actually as he goes through this door, it actually forms a single dot. It's the same exact single dot you see in the beginning of the second movie, exactly. And that's the connection. So he's going into that singular echad of this world of the architect. So I'm just going to cue it up, and then there's some interesting dialogue too. It's only a couple of minutes. It goes longer, but the scene here is very okay, I want to make sure I get everything up here. If you can't hear this, let me know, but you should be able to. Okay, so watch what happens here. Your Orain solve, and then you're gonna see this change here. Single dot that he goes like through and emerges on the other side of it. Right there. That's the exact meaning of the second movement. And now he's in this world of the architect, which is Chokhmah, or the world of Atzilut, creator. You can see all these screens represent everything that's going on right now in a unified state, but these screens will also...
Tovia, the screen is not sharing. We're only seeing the architect.
Who are you? I am the...
Hold on. All right, I'm going to try share screen again. Oh, can you hear me? No. A couple of technical glitches. I lost audio there too. All right, so I'm going to reshare this again. And just type in yes or no if it's working in a second. All right, so here's where he's going into the store. The light or insult is your dot. That's the same dot where it starts. And then in the architect's layer, you'll see multiple screens, which is all dimensions of what was and is to come. But got them all. Now you can see they're all trained on one, but you'll see later it'll show many images of the past of Neo, all as one. That's all Chokhmah related, Atzilut related.
Hello, Neo. Who are you? I am the architect. I created the Matrix. I've been waiting for you. You have many questions, and though the process has altered your consciousness, you remain irrevocably human. Ergo, some of my answers you will understand, and some of them you will not. Concordantly, while your first question may be the most pertinent, you may or may not realize it is also the most irrelevant. Why am I here? Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision. While it remains a burden assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control, which has led you inexorably here. You haven't answered my question. Quite right. Interesting. That was quicker than the others. Others? How many? Others. What? Answer me. The Matrix is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the sixth version. 5 months before me. There are only 2 possible explanations. There were 5 months before me. Either no one told me, or no one knows. Precisely. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equations.
smash you to bits. You can't make me do anything, white prick.
Choice. The problem is choice.
The first Matrix I designed was quite naturally perfect. It was a work of art, flawless, sublime, a triumph equaled only by its monumental failure. The inevitability of its doom is apparent to me now as a consequence of the imperfection inherent in every human being. Thus I redesigned it, based on your history, to more accurately reflect the varying grotesqueries of your nature. However, I was again frustrated by failure. I have since come to understand that the answer eluded me because it required a lesser mind, or perhaps a mind less bound by the parameters of perfection. Thus, the answer was stumbled upon by another, an intuitive program, initially created to investigate certain aspects of the human psyche. If I am the father of the Matrix, she would undoubtedly be its mother.
The Oracle.
Please. As I was saying, she stumbled upon a solution whereby nearly 99% of all test subjects accepted the program as long as they were given a choice, even if they were only aware of the choice at a near unconscious level. While this answer functioned, it was obviously fundamentally flawed, thus creating the otherwise contradictory systemic anomaly that, if left unchecked, might threaten the system itself. Ergo, those that refuse the program, while a minority, if unchecked, would constitute an escalating probability of disaster.
This is about Zion.
You are here because Zion is about to be destroyed. Its every living inhabitant terminated, its entire existence eradicated.
Bullshit.
Bullshit.
Denial is the most predictable of all human responses. But rest assured, this will be the 6th time we have destroyed it, and we have become exceedingly efficient at it.
Okay, yeah, I know. I've had some issues with the trying to go full screen and then getting back to Zoom here. So I may try that, but I don't, I need a little more practice with that. A lot in that dialogue, a lot, and we're gonna really break it apart in an article we're working on here. He does talk a bit about his relationship to the Oracle and what her functionality is, which is a great description of Bina, both Kabbalistically, but also psychologically, how he starts talking about how she relates to is able to relate to human beings in a way that he can't. But the two of them work together, and that's the nature of Chokhmah and Binah. They are the pair that is always together. In fact, let me go to share screen here and go back to the to this, and then down to the Oracle. Down at the bottom here in the Zohar verse, the Chokhmah and Binah are two friends who never part. The mother-father aspect of God, as we understand God, always at that level, it's always functioning together, as opposed to further down where you have like judgment and mercy on the left and the right. Okay, Chesed, Gevurah, they are almost like two sides of a what do you call it? A seesaw. You know, one can be up, one can be down. Very different functionality than Chokhmah and Binah, which work in tandem together. As he said, she's the mother of the matrix. Binah is the power of conceptual analysis. It's deriving one thing or many things from one thing. That's exactly what she does with relation to the architect in terms of managing the matrix worlds with him. She, in her own dialogue, we're going to see that in a minute, is future oriented. He is more past oriented, as he talked about his past matrix worlds and Neo's past and all of that. Perhaps one of the more interesting things here that we heard a couple of times is that Neo's not the first Neo. He's not the first one. Again, and I've got quotations right out of the Zohar and other places in the Matrix4Humans knowledge base. This is correct. He's the 6th one. That's been said many times. If you know Kabbalistically, there's supposed to be 6,000 years of this existence. Again, the 6th Neo. There's actually 6 figures that are to come according to the Zohar. There's the 6 Sefirot that we talked about that need to be repaired, that group of 6 that are related to the 6,000 years. All these things are interconnected. This is why Neo is the 6th and last version to come and able to do what the others, as he said, couldn't do, because he's got all of these dimensions that he rectifies within him, as opposed to just less so than the other ones that came before. So again, there's a lot more detail to this, and it's all in the articles on Matrix4Humans. So you can poke around there and find some very cool stuff. There's a close relationship between, well, the other thing before I forget, on the architect, the word Chokhmah is actually comes from a couple of words, koach and ma, which means potential of what is. So just like that point before the Big Bang, all the potential is in there. All the potential of humanity starts with the architect. It's all in him, so to speak. But the abilities of the oracle are needed to, to connect everything together. But still, it's interesting. Also, when Neo, if you recall, when Neo first goes to the architect, the oracle, the very first time to meet her in her apartment, he's told to wait here with the other potentials. That's that word of that Chokhmah is koach and ma, potential of what is or what could be. So they call potentials those other kids that are in the room as he's waiting for the oracle. It's interesting. And I got a whole article on that word and the kids and everything also. So I took all of these different aspects, all of these different concepts, and gave each one of them an article on the website, so you can delve into that a little bit more. Another video here, another short one. This I think might be our last video. Then there's a few more slides, and then we can have some more chat. This one, as I said, there's 3 conversations Neo has with the Oracle. And as I also mentioned earlier, each of these movies is Neo progressing through one level of the soul. The first movie is about Neo doing everything he has to do to rectify the level of Nefesh. The second movie is the level of Ruach. And then the third movie we saw is the level of Neshama. And each of these levels has all 5 levels within it. And so you're going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels within Nefesh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels within Ruach, and so on. And it's really amazing. And I've got it outlined. We talked about it 2 months ago, but it's also on the website. It's really amazing that all 3 movies exactly follow the 5 steps. There's something significant, exactly what you would expect. All 3 movies start with Neo sleeping. He's out cold in the first movie, he's out cold in the second movie, he's out cold in the third movie. And there's a spark that comes to life, and then there's a second aspect of Ruach of confusion or dreams or something that's all fuzzy. And then the third level within each movie, he meets the Oracle. He meets the Oracle after that in the first, second, and third movies. And each level that she meets him at, she gives him the information that he's able to handle at that time. Elisheva did a room on Lag BaOmer, and she talked about the idea of trying to give somebody, like you want to pass along, you want to make some vessel out of molten silver or gold or something, right? And if you tried to pour that molten silver into a paper cup, it would be a disaster. You could never hold it. So Hashem gives you what you're able to handle until you advance more, then more comes. This is actually explained in detail in the third movie when Neo says, how come you didn't tell me more? And she said, it wasn't time. He says, well, who decided when it was time? And she looks at him and he realizes, he says, I did. It was up to me to make myself more able to understand the things that she couldn't tell him. So she gives him, it's interesting, she gives him just enough to provoke him and push him in each movie. And like I said, Kabbalistically, it all lines up exactly. This is a crazy, amazing movie way beyond. Who came up with it? Well, here's the concept. I'll take this is a really important thing. I have an article in the knowledge base. It's like number 50, I think it is. It's called Beyond the Mind of the Wachowskis. So this isn't that they went and studied these things and make a movie. They obviously have they do have some Kabbalistic knowledge. They did study a little bit, but the thing is, God in real life, not the movie, God in real life works in very mysterious ways. And like I said, every act of human creation, anytime you or I or anybody does something where we're using our creative mind, the things we draw from are out there. They're already out there. They're in that image of God. You know, we all draw from that same hidden source, that hidden pool, which is that fifth world. You know, and so we express things individually in songs and in books and in movies and all. As I said earlier, you know, all of this stuff inevitably is all compacted into, you know, that image of God that we're created in. Everything is there. And so, you know, you don't have to be a religious person, so to speak, to be tapped into these things. And God can use whoever he wants, right? Hashem talked through a donkey, as I recall, in the Torah. So if he can talk through a donkey and give great truths, in fact, Balaam said some great truths about Jacob. He's like the most evil person in the Torah, probably. And his words, Balaam's words, are read in the synagogue regularly about, you know, Jacob's role, right? And so God can do what he wants, and he clearly does things in this world. There's a rabbi named Gideon Holland, and Rabbi Holland and another gentleman did a 10-part Matrix series. It's all in Hebrew, but it's captioned in English. And if you Google, you'll find it. And he calls the Matrix a Trojan horse. Okay, I don't Balaam, Pharaoh, pick one. They're all aspects of the same. Which is worse, the Merovingian or Smith? Well, we'll find out. Anyhow, all aspects of the other side. Gideon Holland, Rabbi Holland, calls the Matrix a Trojan horse, meaning that this is a movie that looks like a regular, you know, science fiction, adventure, whatever movie out into the public, extremely popular like no other at one point. And he says it's completely full of Torah concepts from one end to the other. Same thing I'm saying. He calls it a Trojan horse for that reason, that God in his infinite wisdom is getting Torah out into the world, is getting these deep concepts into the world in a way that the world would find palatable. You know, so the world does not go to a yeshiva. You know, people are out there and they're getting these concepts into their minds for whatever purpose, maybe for what is to come, and or some will do more studies and catch on, etc. You know, but that's what he calls it. He calls the movie a Trojan horse, which I think is a perfect definition of what's going on here with this film. Because like I said, there's a lot of movies and works of art and books that reflect these Torah concepts, Kabbalistic concepts, but nothing comes remotely close to the Matrix. And I saw it back 21 years ago, and I have been studying it and literally seen the three movies combined over 400 times. Okay, and we used to watch this we had the Torah study groups, and for a couple of years we were playing Matrix movies at all our Torah study groups locally here, and going back and forth between the Torah and books and the Matrix movie and all of that. So Elishem and I have been at this movie and no other movie like this forever now. So it is absolutely, and the more and more you dig, and we're going to get into even deeper stuff. I already got, like I said, 50 some odd articles and 20 some odd blog entries, and with much more to come. Because what we're doing with the website is, after we show all of these concepts in the movie and hopefully get some people's attention, say, hey, this is real interesting stuff. And then now what we're doing in a new section called the M Files. Remember the old TV show, the X Files? We're doing the M Files. And in the M Files sections, we're showing these concepts. We're bringing them back into things in life. So we have an article already on the 7 Habits book by Stephen Covey. I have a video between Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand on the AA 10-step groups and how all this stuff is in there. I actually have one on Winnie the Pooh and one on Harry Potter, believe it or not. And these are more cultural things. We're going to have a whole Kabbalistic section too. So we're showing the stuff in the movies, and then we're going to bring it back into real life, and then develop some discussion groups and other things too. And over the next couple of years after the movie comes out, it's going to be madness. So hopefully we'll have a lot of people tuning in. So I'm rambling here. Let's get back to, here's a video. This is the second and very important, oh yeah, like I said, I got to make sure that this works again. It didn't work last time. So I may have to, but this is the second discussion with Neo and the Oracle. The first one was very basic. He was still at that low level of Nefesh, didn't have a clue. She gave him some obscure things that got him going. Now he's gotten past this level of Nefesh. You'll notice the first thing she says, hey, you turned out all right. Code word meaning you succeeded at that first level. Now let me tell you what your next step is. She gives everybody their direction. This is the aspect of Binah, by the way, of God, what gives you your direction in life, like you know, which way you're heading, where to go with your life. And so everyone who does make that connection in the Matrix and gets out of the Matrix, they all meet the Oracle. That's said in more than one place in the movies. Everybody sees the Oracle. Everybody tells them, quote, exactly what they need to hear, meaning she sets them on their, she gives them their, what I call their condition. And from there, they move forward, hopefully, and advance. So that's the aspect of God called Binan. That's what gives us our path God guides us on. All right. So save some of these questions for the break. I'm missing some, I know. So just write them down. Like I mentioned earlier, please jot them down. So let's just watch this video real quick because there's some absolutely cool stuff in here too. I might have to share this. Okay, let me start it. Second here, share screen. Hopefully. All right, let me know if you can see this and hear some sound.
Well, come on.
Are we
I ain't
good?
gonna bite you. Come around here and let me have a look at you.
Get the park bench going. Okay, right here.
My goodness, look at you. You turned out all right, didn't
Turned
you?
out all right. Get
How do you
the
feel?
love of Nefesh.
I know you're not sleeping. We'll get to that.
Okay, I'm just gonna pause it right there real quick. So here again, the concept of dreams and all of this, or that confusion of what to do, is at the beginning, toward the beginning of each movie. This is the level of Ruach within each level. So you have the level of Ruach in the first movie within Nefesh, you have the level of Ruach in the second movie within Ruach, and you have the level of Ruach in the third movie within Neshama. So each level, as I said, has all five within it. So I won't interrupt anymore. It was just a point I wanted to mention in terms of dreams and being unsure where to go. So you have that spark that says, you know, I think there's more to life. That's that first spark. And then you start pursuing spiritual things and it can get very confusing, you know, right? A lot of people, you may have a lot of setbacks and confusion in your whole life. And that's always at that level of Ruach where things are volatile. All right, so I'm going to hopefully reshare this here and restart it. Hold on here. No, I don't want to do that. 1 second. Share screen. Oracle. Let's start her up here.
Why don't you come and have a sit this time?
Hopefully you can hear this okay.
Maybe I'll stand.
Well, suit yourself.
I felt like sitting.
I know. So, let's get the obvious stuff out of the way.
You're not human, are you?
Well, it's tough to get any more obvious than that.
If I had to guess, I'd say you're a program from the machine world. So is he.
So far, so good.
But if that's true, that could mean you are part of this system. Another kind of control.
Keep going.
I suppose the most obvious question is, how can I trust you?
Bingo. It is a pickle, no doubt about it. Bad news is there's no way if you can really know whether I'm here to help you or not. So it's really up to you. Just have to make up your own damn mind to either accept what I'm going to tell you or reject it. Tandy?
You already know if I'm going to take it.
Wouldn't be much of an oracle if I didn't.
But if you already know, how can I make a choice?
Because you didn't come here to make the choice. You've already made it. You're here to try to understand why you made it. I thought you'd have figured that out by now.
Why are you here?
Same reason. I love candy.
But why help us?
We're all here to do what we're all here to do. I'm interested in one thing, Neo, the future. And believe me, I know the only way to get there is together.
Are there other programs like you?
Oh, well, not like me, but... Look, see those birds? At some point, a program was written to govern them. A program was written to watch over the trees and the winds, sunrise and sunset. There are programs running all over the place. The ones doing their job, doing what they were meant to do, are invisible. You never even know they were here. But the other ones, well, you hear about them all the time.
I've never heard of them.
Of course you have. Every time you've heard someone say they saw a ghost or an angel. Every story you've ever heard about vampires, werewolves, or aliens is the system assimilating some program that's doing something they're not supposed to be doing.
Programs hacking programs. Why?
There are reasons, but usually a program chooses exile when it faces deletion.
And why would a program be deleted?
Maybe it breaks down. Maybe a better program is created to replace it. Happens all the time. And when it does, a program can either choose to hide here or return to the source.
The machine mainframe.
Yes. Where you must go. Where the path of the one ends.
Okay. Yeah, there we are. We're still on. We're running a little late here, so I don't want to get. There's a whole article on the Matrix4Humans websites about the programs and the hierarchy of programs. There's hierarchies in the spiritual domains as well, and that's all explained in the Zohar and other texts as well. The interesting thing there, the notion of a program, dealing with every little aspect, the birds and everything. That's right out of the Zohar and a Midrashim, both, that say that there's an angel. I think the verse has something to do with an angel for every blade of grass. It's a metaphor, but it's like taken right out of there. It's really pretty cool. The oracle, as we says, has a very, you can see this very intimate relationship she has with Neo and with humans. They're the ones that all relate to her. And if you go on, I think I posted the slideshow for 2 months ago, as well as the video, either one. But there's texts that talk about this attribute of Bina and how Bina is the one that relates to everything intimately below as her children. The mother as her children is called. In fact, Proverbs is interesting. Proverbs 9:1 says that wisdom built her house on 7 pillars. There's a couple ways to take that. Wisdom sometimes is referred to in the feminine in the Torah. It's actually a masculine attribute, as we talked about on the Tree of Life, and there's a reason for that. But another way you can read that verse is wisdom built her house, built Bina's house, and the children, the 7 children, or the 7 Sefirot below are that which she rests on. So there's an intimate relationship between the oracle and people, and helping them get where they need to get. What she says to Neo in the 3rd movie, she says, thanks, David. In the 3rd movie, if you go up to the Matrix4Humans.com and just hit knowledge base, the list, you can see all the articles listed there by title and click on them too. What was I just saying? I forget. I lost my train of thought. All right. I'll have to come back to that. I forgot what I was going to say, sorry. One of the other things to keep in mind, with her relationship with the humans, and like she said, we're all here to do what we're all here to do, and it gets confusing. It's like, well, there's group, what do you call it, blogs out there saying, oh, she's really tricking them all and she's evil. It's like, no, that's not it at all. The tendency in people watching movies, and these kind of movies, we've got all kinds of these movies, always good guys and bad guys, good guys and bad guys. This is not a good guys versus bad guys movie. This is about rectification of humanity, of actually getting them to change and be fixed. And everything is geared to make that happen, but there's problems with the system itself. There's defects within the world we live in. This is a place we're at to make those changes and rectify things and get closer to God. But what we have to deal with ourselves in this world itself is messed up. Same with the Matrix movies, these aspects, these Sefirot, you'll see, in just a minute, we're going to cover some of these other characters, and you'll see these defects exhibited in defects in these different Sefirot exhibited through the human characters. So the character of the architect is very firmly fixed at Chokhmah. The character of the oracle is very firmly fixed at Bina. As I mentioned earlier, they're higher computer programs. They're like higher angelic figures, if you will. So think of programs as angels. Think of them as like the higher realm of archangels or powers, forces. There's different terminologies used for the same thing. But then when you get into the human characters, and even some of the, even some of the others that are more programs but lower level, they can exhibit different different characteristics, different Sefirot, depending on the situation or what they are, who they are, etc. Well, the thing with wisdom, Chokhmah is the father, right? Abba is at Chokhmah, right? And when the Torah is talking about creation coming into being, that emanates from Malkut, which is the daughter. And the saying in Kabbalah is that when the father and the daughter are connected, the name of God is one. All the Sefirot are working in harmony. There's nothing sinful separating them. When the father and the daughter is connected to the father, she is called by his name. She is called Chokhmah. She is called wisdom. That's the connecting verse. I don't know where that is. I don't know if it's in the Zohar. I don't think it is. I think it's in some other text. But when everything is connected, the name of God is one. And creation comes from the daughter. That's why you see it's all related to creation. A lot of these verses and Proverbs and all, and it's the Shekhinah is called wisdom by her, which is her father's name, because they're unified. They're in the unified state. Okay. Yeah, something to jot it down, something to pursue. There's information out there. It's probably on a Chabad site somewhere. You know? Okay, so where are we? We've got to go back to our share screen and take a look at our. Okay. So I think we won't have to. I don't think we have any more videos, so we have just a couple more slides here because we're going down. Hopefully, y'all can see now. We're getting into the next six. That six pack. Fix the six. So we're getting into these different right, left, and central aspects of the characters and of Neo and of us here. And the first of this group of six starts on the right at Chesed. Everything starts on the right in terms of this, you know, you have the force and then you have the form or the restriction on the left. Chesed means loving kindness, but you need to think of it more general in terms of that proactive, expansive concept, okay? And it doesn't have any type of restrictions or anything. So it's associated with the concept of emunah, of faith. You know, faith is singular. You have faith and, you know, or you don't. Trust, bitachon is different. It's like, I call it 50 Shades of Gray. It's all the things you have to work on and figure out and struggles. There's a saying, it was, what's his name on Chabad? C. Freeman, right? C. Freeman says, trust gets you to the door and faith knocks the door down. I kind of like that one. That's pretty cool. So anyhow, there's a couple of characters that really express this proactive concept and the faith concept, the details. What does Morpheus say? My beliefs don't require anyone else to believe as I do. When they come out of the elevator scene from when they went over to see the Merovingian and got kicked out, they were discussing what may have gone wrong. And he looks, he says, no, everything happened exactly the way it should have happened and could not have happened any other way. That's right out of Breslov Chabad theology. It's like, yeah, you know, there's a plan and we're within it, but it's going to happen. And then the door opens and the story continues. He was right. So Morpheus is the great man of faith in the story, and faith, which they call belief throughout the scripts for all three movies. In fact, the last final movie at the very, very end, like one of the last things said, the Oracle says, she's asked, did you know it was going to come out this way? She goes, no, but I believed. And that's how the movie ends. That's how the third movie ends. So faith is proactive. It's associated when you do the Omer Count or when you do the Sukkot, you do the Ushpizin, the seven patriarchs that are lined up with these seven lower Sefirot. Abraham, he just went. He just had faith. God said, go, and he just went. No details. He just, show me later, God. I'm packing and moving, you know. So that's the concept of Chesed. You see it also in the character to the left in the background. They're called Counselor Haman. And Counselor Haman is also one exhibiting characteristics from that right side. Again, no restriction. If you look at the questions, when he meets Neo on the deck and they have a discussion in the second movie or third, I forget. But all of his questions to Neo are open-ended. Like, what do you think of this idea? And so on. He's using that concept of no restriction on the side of expansion to get Neo to think more deeply. So all of his questions, you'll notice, are completely open-ended. He's a perfect example of that. Let's go on to a couple more here. So from Chesed on the right, we're going over to the left, Gevura. Gevura, now none of the attributes are good or bad. They're just attributes, okay? However, because Gevura is the aspect of judgment, or more precisely restriction, it restricts things, which is necessary. Gevura is critical. It's critical to creation. There's no creation without Gevura. At some point, something has to stop. It's like, okay, we're going to have this many animals. We're going to have, human beings are going to have 2 arms and not 3. Gevura puts limitations on things, and it's very critical. It's associated with an idea called Tzimtzum, which is that we mentioned way earlier. That's a restriction to make room for something else. The very first and greatest phenomenal act of Tzimtzum, which Elisheva talks about and will some more in the future, was when there was nothing but God before any creation, before any existence. It was just singularity of God. We don't even understand that. And then somehow God, metaphorically, I guess is the word, restricted of God, of himself, if you will. You need to use words. And made this restriction, opened up the possibility for something else, namely creation, to come into existence. So that was the first act and greatest act of any act God ever did, where he created something came into existence that was not God. Everything else is lesser after that. And in that respect, because you're taking a step down from God's perfection to something less than that, that is actually can be considered like the root or first act of, don't get this wrong, first act of evil. Where Isaiah says, I create, evil, and I make good, and I create, what's the verse? It's Isaiah 45 something. But he says in there that, and it's a troublesome verse for some people. How can God be behind, evil? But it's in that respect, in terms of Tzimtzum, where that action made room for otherness, if you will. So because even at our level, restriction can be, it's a necessary thing, right? It wasn't Tzimtzum, we'd be annihilated. God's essence, God's presence throughout existence has to be lessened to the point that we can exist. We can't exist amidst God's perfection and unity. We'd be obliterated. It's like holding up a little match to the sun, like boom, you're gone. So because God restricts of himself through these different levels of creation we talked about down to ours, that we're able to exist. And this gives us a way of, because there's otherness, this gives us a way to try to understand God and learn and get back to where we came from. So Gevura is an important concept, but it's also one, because it's restriction, that can be negative. It can block out what's good. It can block out the light of God. So the concept of evil in our world, in our dimension, where we sin and things like this that we would consider bad, evil relates to the Gevura a lot in terms of its source, if you will. The Gevura is neutral, it's just restriction, but Gevura applied in such a certain fashion is what we would call evil in a bad sense. And there's many aspects to this evil concept of evil. There's something called the other side, if you will, the Sitra Achra, and this has many aspects to it. In the Bible, you see the serpent, you see the dragon, you see Ha-Satan, you see all these different things. The archangel, the angel, Esau's angels, we call him Samek Mem, just the letters because we don't pronounce his name. Even our own evil, our own Yetzer Hara, our own evil inclination, sorry, lost the phrase there. All of these things are interrelated, and they all have to do with this side of restriction in a way that can be troublesome. So you see aspects of this in some of the different characters, but the two that really represent the left side and Gevura the most in terms of restriction in a negative way, but ultimately to help the humans, Remember, there's really no good guys or bad guys. Everything here is actually, like in our world, Gamza Latova, it's all meant for the good. Everything in this movie is meant for human beings to inevitably succeed, even these difficult things. Smith, Agent Smith at the top, represents certain aspects of Gavura, and the character of the Merovingian represents somewhat different ones. If I were to assign roles to these, I would say that because Smith is the accuser, he's the one that's putting down humans as a virus, and everything he does, he's more related to the concept of Hasatan, the Satan. Whereas the Merovingian, everything about him, if you look at the details about him, go to the Merovingians page on the Matrix4Humans site, you'll see there's some really fascinating things about him. In fact, I've got 2 or 3 pages related to him. And he's going to be a major character in the 4th movie. You can write that down. You can take that to the bank. He's going to be the major character in the 4th movie because the serpent, which he represents, the serpent concept, needs to be rectified. The difference between these two with relation to Neo is, as the Oracle tells us, Smith is Neo's opposite conceptually, whereas the Merovingian, we're told by his wife Persephone, was once like Neo. Now that's interesting because he's not human. He's a program. He's an angelic type being. So if you say, well, if he represents an angelic type being that is like the messianic figure but goes awry, that's the serpent in Kabbalistic literature. That's what he is. And if you look at his realm, his place where he lives, all these things point to that. So you're going to see, if you remember the very first screen I showed where there was a serpent on the screen with the little girl, it's our logo for our Matrix group. Keep that in mind, the serpent Merovingian and that girl, who she is in the 4th, will be pretty much at odds in the 4th movie. Persephone is the opposite of Trinity. She is to Trinity what Neo is to the Merovingian. And I've got stuff on all of that on her page on the website too. But she's Malkut on the other side. So anyhow, these are the attributes on the left are much more complex than those on the right. You know, if you think of it again like pouring water out of a pitcher, that's easy to do. You tilt the pitcher, water's coming out, right? But if you have like 5 different glasses and you need 3 ounces in this one and 4 ounces in this one, and you know, you got to measure, much more complicated. That's a way to look at the right and left side attributes, you know? Morpheus, man of faith, it's all going to work out. And then on the left side, you know, you're dealing with these very complex characters and what restriction does in terms of getting human beings to think differently and react. Even the Oracle, who's at the top of the tree there on the left, Bina, what does she say about her relationship? She says the architect is always trying to balance the equation. Neo says, well, what's your role? She says to unbalance it. And that's not just some cute, funny thing. That's the left side, is there to shake things up, to unbalance things, to get us to think. And sometimes it's unpleasant. If you read the New Testament, there's a verse in Romans chapter 5 that says, rejoice in tribulation, difficult things come your way because it's going to cause all this good stuff to happen. It's like, what? And that's exactly Tzimtzum. That's exactly the role of the left side, to sometimes give you difficulties in order to accomplish something better. In fact, this goes back to the very beginning of Genesis when Eve is formed out of Adam. Right before that, it's the strangest thing. The first time something not good is referred to, right? Lotov, God says it's not good for man to be alone. There's a clue that something's going on there. Out comes Eve, Chava, and what is she called? She's called Ezer Kenegdo, which in the King James says a helpmeet, which tells you nothing. You look up the term and it's one who opposes. Her job is to be on the left side, the female, remember we said the left is feminine, the left side to give Adam something that causes him to think deeper, differently, etc., in order for him to advance. Similar to the Eshet Chal, the woman of valor in Proverbs, and what it says about her too. So the feminine side, the female side, restricts the male side, causes it to advance further, deeper than it would without the restriction. Trinity actually plays that role in the movies in a couple places too. All right, so let's move on a little bit more. So keep in mind, these characters are important. Smith actually is not coming back in the next movie, but his general concept is always there, of course. But it's going to get more specific. The Merovingian is coming back in the next movie, and it's going to be a lot to do with what he is and in terms of relating to see the people need to rise up. There needs to be an arousal from below and to go above. And there's a thing in the Zohar that talks about how the serpent lurks right behind the Shekhinah to sneak up with her or behind her to advance. It's really interesting. And I think that's what we're going to see in the next movie. All right, let's go down to now. So we hit those two. So now the confluence of the, I guess so, between Chesed and Gevurah, right and left. Now you go down to, oops, hold on, hit the wrong thing here. Oh, here we go. Hope you can still see it. Here we go. Tiferet, which is the balance between the two. So in Torah associates Hesed with Abraham and Gevurah with Isaac. One was too far to the right. Abraham didn't know when to say no. He couldn't figure things out. God sent Sarah his way to straighten him out. Isaac has all these restrictions. His wife's picked for him. He never leaves the land. He's bound up on the altar, right? So then along comes Jacob, who's the balance between the two. The Torah says that he was in both tents, meaning his father and his grandfather. And he's the balance of those attributes. At Tiferet, it also says the truth is with Jacob. Tiferet is also called truth. It really means beauty, but in the sense of harmony and balance. That's why it's in the middle. Tiferet is a key central attribute. It often stands in for all of those six in the middle as a representative, if you will, in a lot of the text. Now, what's interesting here is on a human level, we'll say for now human, it has a lot to do with someone who's also very charismatic. But charismatic can be good or bad charismatic. You can have somebody who's actually humble and thinking of others, and that glows out of the man or woman that is like that, and they're charismatic and attracting people in a good way. But you also know people who it's all about personality games they play, and they manipulate people, and people fall for it, or people just go for it because they're also like that. So you see that difference between Neo and the Merovingian. I think that's going to become even more clear in the fourth movie. The Merovingian is all about manipulating people in his own little world he created. And excuse me. I think I do have one last video. I lied. Okay, one last video. So let's check this out here. Let me stop sharing, come back and share. Started. Oh, I'm gonna find you. Hold on a second here. Oh, there we go. My bar wouldn't come up. Share screen. Okay, so this is Neo's third meeting with the Oracle. It's just for a couple minutes here, okay?
Where does it end?
I don't know.
You don't know or you won't tell me.
I told you before, no one can see beyond a choice they don't.
You guys see this okay?
understand. And I mean no one.
What choice?
It doesn't matter. It's my choice. I have mine to make, same as you have yours.
Does that include what things to tell me and what not to tell me?
Of course not.
Then why didn't you tell me about the architect? Why didn't you tell me about Zion and the ones before me? Why didn't you tell me the truth?
Because it wasn't time for you to know.
Who decided it wasn't time?
You know who.
I did. Then I think it's time for me to know a few more things.
So do I.
Tell me how I separated my mind from my body without jacking in. Tell me how I stopped 4 sentinels by thinking it. Tell me just what the hell is happening to me.
The power of the One extends beyond this world. It reaches from here all the way back to where it came from.
Where?
The source. That's what you felt when you touched those sentinels. But you weren't ready for it. You should be dead. But apparently you weren't ready for that either.
The architect told me that if I didn't return to the source, Zion would be destroyed by midnight tonight.
Please.
You and I may not be able to see beyond our own choices, but that man can't see past any choice.
Why not?
He doesn't understand them. He can't. To him, they are variables in an equation. One at a time, each variable must be solved and counted. That's his purpose, to balance the equation.
What's your purpose?
To unbalance it.
Why? What do you want?
I want the same thing you want, Neo. And I'm willing to go as far as you are to get it.
The end of the war. Is it going to end?
One way or another.
Can Zion be saved?
I'm sorry I don't have the answer to that question, but if there's an answer, there's only one place you're going to find it.
Where?
You know where. And if you can't find the answer, then I'm afraid there may be no tomorrow for any of us.
What does that mean?
Everything that has a beginning has an end.
Okay. Let me get myself back. Open it up. Shut a window here. Back to you guys here. Hold on. Here we go. Okay. A lot of things in that dialogue. I don't know if you picked up at the end, everything beginning as an end. That's a twist on Sefirot, very first chapter. And that's a key to the fourth movie as well. I'm going to get to that in one of the characters in a second. The actress from the first two movies actually, unfortunately, passed away in real life, and they had to get a new oracle. They tweaked the script just enough to explain it. It was insignificant. The words are what matters, what she represents. You could have anyone, but yeah, she actually passed away. Gloria, I forget her last name. She did such a great job too. But that, that's what happened. It was an interesting thing. Neo here, and this is the third time he meets with an oracle. Now he's at that third level of Nefesh, which is the actual highest level most human beings can get to, although we'll go a little higher in the next movie. So he's at this high level within Nefesh, where he's at a higher level connecting to the oracle. She tells him, and she looks back at the sign. That sign, by the way, is Latin, temet nose, which means know thyself, which, of course, if you twist that back into the Hebrew, know thyself means to what? It means to connect da'at to yourself, which is exactly the whole theme here of Neo making this connection. What is this connection? As she says, the power of the one goes all the way back past everything to the source, which is exactly what the Zohar says about the Zadik or the Mashiach. I can't remember which it is. It says that he's the letter Vav in the name Yod-Heh, the Vav, hey, he's the connecting piece. And it says that the Vav and the soul of Mashiach goes all the way back to Ein Sof. That's the same, it's right out of the Zohar. A lot of these things are directly out of these texts. It's really amazing. And that's one of them. So that's pretty cool. I mentioned, Temet Nose, and so let's see. He asked a specific question about what the outcome might be, and she says, well, I can't tell you, I don't know. And it's true. It's really a lot of things are left up to us, or Neo in this case, but it's also going to be left up to the others in the fourth movie. Same thing about, again, if you read New Testament, there's a verse in there about, who knows when the end will be. And it's like, well, no one does. Only the highest aspect of God kind of knows that. It's really in our hands in terms of a lot of what we do in terms of how things work out and when and all of that. So interesting connection there too. So there's a lot in that dialogue there. Tiferet, as I said, because it's that central Sephirah, everything connects to it. Only the Father, outside of creation, Abba, Father, would have that idea that, but then everything's left to us. Everything's known, but everything's left to us. It's Pirkei Avot. It's weird. We can't understand how both can be true, but they are. We'll get from A to Z for sure, but how we get from A to Z is much in our hands. It's a whole other discussion on free will and all. So some other time. That would really take us all night and beyond. Maybe we'll do that all night on Shavuot, right? So anyhow, this is Tiferet, which again, they're neutral, but you can see these aspects of Tiferet in Neo, but also you're going to see them even more in the fourth movie in the Merovingian, who's used to be like Neo. That's a big clue, even though he's a serpent figure. And you see a lot of the relationship in these Kabbalistic texts between the Messiah figure to come and the serpent figure at the beginning. And it's very peculiar, including in the Torah, right, where the serpent is put on the stick and raised above. There's all these interesting connections. Sefer Yetzirah, there's a diagram in there showing the serpent, and then when you flip it upside down, it looks like the Zadik and his, peyote and everything. It's really weird. So there's a lot of this strange interplay between those concepts. The serpent was originally supposed to help mankind. He was supposed to be a help for humans, but something went awry. And I discussed some of that in the Merovingian profile on the website. There's also an article on the train station. Read that, because he's in charge of the train station, and the train station is the connection between the angelic world and the matrix world, which would be like our world. And there's a lot of interesting things involved there in terms of the idea that the serpent has some kind of not only view, but effect or control over what comes into this world, and etc. And that's Kabbalistic text talking about souls that come into this world actually pass by the Sitra Achra, the other side, the evil realm. And there's an idea in there that, and don't ask me why God has this all set up this way. That's another discussion. But the idea here is that when a righteous soul might come into the world, that the other side sees this and will do what it can to mess up the equation, to strike at it somehow, whether it's physically trying to kill the person like with Moses, or etc. There's going to be something. So God, Hashem, has this way of sneaking righteous people in past the view of the serpent. Okay, follow me. And you see examples of this mentioned in Torah literature about people whose whose entry into the world was marred by some apparent, not true, but apparent, infidelity or impropriety, something wrong with like the parents and all. So you have, for instance, the lineage of Mashiach goes through Lot and his daughters. It goes through, who else am I thinking of here? Judah, right? And
Rahab.
yeah, but yes, Rahab also, Judah and his was it daughter-in-law, whatever. There's all of these things that some good person comes out of a relationship that looks bad on the surface. So it tricks the other side that says, oh, this person is no big deal. Just they can come right through. And that's how these righteous souls are snuck in past through the serpent, the god of this world, and all of that stuff. It's just really interesting because there's somebody who gets snuck through past the Merovingian. Merovingian, as he says, he's the trafficker of information. He's the trafficker that controls the train station, controls the link at Yesod coming through. And there's someone that comes through there that looks like they're coming through for one purpose, but ultimately in the next movie, you're going to see is a different purpose. We'll get to that person in just 1 minute. Let me continue with like our last couple slides here, because I know it's getting late. Okay, where are we? We're sharing screen? No, we're not sharing screen. We're going to share screen here and go back to that. All right. So Merovingian, he's a left side figure, but he's also strongly charismatic in the middle in his own little world. And Tiferet, kind of like a counterfeit Neo, if you will, quote unquote, like an antichrist figure or something like that. I think you're going to see more of that in the next movie. And let's go down to the next one, which is, is Diane still here? Oh, Diane's still here. Diane, you still here? I am paging Diana. if she's still here.
I'm here.
Okay. Are we able to do a raffle?
Yeah, I'm just waiting on you.
Oh, of course you are. I should know better, right? All right. So here's what we're doing. Y'all suck it out here. I've got, these are just samples. I've got a bunch of sample Matrix mugs here in my dining room, of course, because I'm a nerd, and they're boxed up and everything. So I'm going to, because you guys were all so patient, we're going to give 2 away. And again, a random. I'm not even gonna look in the box. It's gonna be a very, it might be one of these, might be a different one. I've designed like 40 of them. I'm giving away the ones I have in stock here because I got them to check them out and give them away. So that's what they're doing. So we're gonna give 2 away. So Diana has this massively incredible technology, which did not appear on the screen last time, by the way, when you did it. So if it doesn't appear, we'll have to trust her. But she's got basically a random generator, and everybody's name is in it, right? So I'm going to shut up here and let her pick two winners, and I'll send 2 mugs out. I'll have you get in touch with me after and send me the your mailing information and send those out. So 2 different winners here. Okay. So are you ready to roll with this, Diana? I think she is.
Yes, I am. Oh, wait, hold on.
I hope it appears on the screen because it's cute.
Okay. Hold on. Let me try and screen share.
Right.
Wait, I need to be a co-host.
Oh, you weren't? I thought I did earlier. I lost you. Right. Or.
Oh, I got kicked out.
Oh yeah. Okay. Make co-host. Okay. You are now promoted. Comes with benefit.
Woohoo.
Big salary increase. All right. So whatever it is, like I said, oh, look at this. Here we go. We're getting somewhere.
All right. I see all my apps that are open. Okay, can you guys see that?
Ooh, yeah.
Okay. And here we go.
This is better than the last one.
I know. This one was good. This is good stuff.
All right. Matrix 2020. Crack me up. Who's our winner? I can hardly wait.
Terry.
Terry here? Yep, Terry's here. All right, Terry gets a mug, and let's do one more. See just sticking it out with listening to my stuff. If you live in Timbuktu, we'll have to talk. Thanks for shipping. This one time, I'm willing to ship to Canada if it comes up that way. All right, who's coming? I have Terry again.
Oh,
Michael
you know
W.
No.
Michael's in Germany, isn't he?
Michael's in Germany. Michael, we're gonna have to draw another name. You can be the honorary winner.
No, I'll get Michael. I'll get Michael something. I got an idea. I'll get an idea on that. So Michael, you are
okay. So we're good.
Something. I'll get back to me online tomorrow or after Shabbat. All right, do one more. Hopefully not Germany. We love Germany, but you know, like I said, I'm paying for the shipping here. Keep it local. All right. Suspense is killing us. I have a prediction here. I predict it's going to be Mandy. I'm just picking a name. Watch this. Psychic power. ABC, tell me you're in India, aren't you? Oh, God. All right.
No, I think he's in the States.
No, I think he's in Canada. All right, ABC, if you're in Canada.
Oh wait, no, my bad. I got the wrong person.
No, I think ABC's in India.
All right. Well, we'll pick one more and then.
Pick one more. Yeah. Get back to me tomorrow.
We make a list of where you guys are at, so I don't keep putting you guys in there.
No, that's okay. I'll get them something. I have a plan on people that are out of the country if they want to do it. Yeah, darn Canadians. And my father's from so okay. Isabel, you. All right, Isabel, get me or Diana your address information when you can, and it'll get to me, and a mug will be on the way. All right, boy, that was excitement.
Real excitement.
These are cool mugs. These are all designed by my wife and myself. All Matrix themed mugs and little promotional stuff. What's it called? Swag? Yeah. All right. So let me go back to share screen. And here we are. We have just a couple more screens. I like this guy in the blue face. He's pretty intense. All right, sharing, going down here. All right, so on our little tree of life diagram, now we're getting down into the ones that are directly more connected with our actual actions in this world. We're going from that triad of Hesed, Gevurah, Tiferet to the triad of Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Netzach is a proactive force again that's more directly connected to our actions more than thoughts and planning, like Hesed would be. Hod is, again, it's the restrictive side. And Yesod is the confluence between the two, where they synergize, where they come together. In fact, Stephen Covey at the Yesod, that would be his sixth habit, is called synergy or synergize. So here I picked 3 characters who have problems. Here we go. Anybody psych majors? Here we go. Analyze these 3 guys. All right. So these lower Sefirot are what Aish, I recommended the Aish site earlier. Aish calls them tactical because they're how we actually do things and put into action, okay? And they work very much in unison, Netzach and Hod. They're called, as I said earlier, a lot of these Sefirot, or all of them except Keter, are associated with some part of the body, and Netzach and Hod are the legs. So that's, most people, when you walk, your legs are pretty much how you use them. You use them in conjunction. Whereas your arms throughout the day, you'll be more right-handed or left-handed, generally speaking, with how you hold your coffee mug or pencils or whatever. They're different. You can see the difference right in the anatomy. So anyhow, let's get back to the psychological look in here. You have the kid on the top left. He's actually called Kid. That's his name in the script, Kid. And Kid is very much, he has boundary issues at first. He's in everyone's face. Can I help you? What can I do? How are you doing? He's chasing people around. He's that annoying kid that you had in your class at school. He has boundary issues. And so that's a good example of someone who has problems with that Hod side of restriction that says, okay, that's enough. Don't ask that person that question. You just met them. That's one aspect. Okay, and he's helped by there's a guy called Captain Mifune. He's Mifune, I forget how it's pronounced. He's the captain of the troops and all. And he's a nice guy. He gets killed at the end, but he helps Kid get into balance, which really helps in the last scene where Kid becomes a hero and actually learns to. And it's kind of funny because he gets in the machine, this big IPU, they call it, infantry something, and he actually left, right. He has to walk inside this machine, and it has guns attached to it, the whole bit. But it's interesting. You can see the legs and everything, Hod Netzah, how he becomes a balanced person and is able to do what he needs to do. And what's interesting too is because he's very strong on the side of Netzach, even though it's a little out of control, Netzach being on the right side relates all the way up to that aspect of faith we talked about earlier. And the last thing he does before he shoots the gun to open the lock, he says, I believe, I have faith, I have emunah. And then he shoots the gun and breaks the chain, and the door opens, and yada, yada, the story goes on. So it's real interesting to see that imbalance and how it's corrected. Then you have the little image, Commander Locke, who's kind of I won't use the word. He's very arrogant. He is an example of the aspect of Hod when it becomes very isolated. Anytime any attribute becomes just isolated from the system, from the rest of them, it can be problematic. You see this with Smith, who becomes free. Remember, in the second movie, he becomes freed, and he's a rogue agent at that point. He's Gevurah, had the purpose of restriction within the system of controlling things, but then he becomes freed and becomes the example of Gevurah unleashed and all just wreaking destruction. He becomes the destroyer, as the Torah calls it. So anyhow, back to Commander Locke. He's an example of how Smith wants to destroy that. Well, that's the aspect of Gevurah. We can get into that later. That when it's separated from the system, because it's just restriction, it inevitably, I have a book here somewhere that actually has a really cool quote on that. I don't have it with me. You know that book on the Sefirot recently, Diana, the blue cover one? I forget. Anyhow, but that's what happens with Gevurah. It just turns in itself like that, with just complete restriction to the point of just destroying everything and just making everything like Smith makes everything like himself, and that's a whole other topic for a night that we should talk about. The whole left side is a whole topic for another night, which we will. And then cipher, of course, cipher is the defect in the aspect of Netzach. because Netzai is on the side of faith, but when faith isn't connected to the higher reality, or when that Netzai, I should say, is not connected properly to the higher, you have faith because you believe something's real, it's really there. And you see, he's the aspect of doubt. He's the aspect of Amalek, actually, in the storyline. If you go to his profile page on the website, you can read more about that. But it's really interesting because his dialogue is right out of the book of Numbers. There's 3 separate sections where he talks about going back, just going back to Egypt. There's a section he complains about the food, just like they complained about the manna. And there's a section where he tears into Morpheus. Who does he think he is and what he's done to us? Same dialogue in Numbers. It's almost like direct quotations out of the book of Numbers. And I show that on the website if you go look under his page. It's just absolutely remarkable. But he's the aspect of Amalek that comes in when there's doubt. That's when the story when they they're holding up Moses' arms. There's a big battle and they were holding up Moses' arms, and it's written in the Zohar that says that when they had doubt and Moses' arms would go down and they start losing the battle. Yeah, that's a big money trail we go down, but it's am I not on audio right now? Hold on. I'd be very sad if I'm not on audio right now. Hold on. Can you hear me? Where am I here? Let's see. Okay, it says my audio is working. All right. So these are guys that are really in the nitty gritty, into the fighting and into the all of this, aspects of the, Netzach and Hod, and how they play out, and how different kinds of defects in these qualities and what they can cause, whether it's just imbalance with the kid or the isolation of Locke. Interesting character we're going to talk about in a minute is Niobe, who dated Locke and also dated Morpheus. She was with one and the other as a girlfriend or whatever. And she's a blend of the 2 attributes, because Morpheus is kind of Locke's. In fact, they really go at it, Morpheus and Locke, in one of the scenes. So anyhow, let's go on to the next page. We're getting near the end here of these slides. I need to move this down. Okay, so what do we got here? Now we get to the fun part, Yesod. Yesod is interesting on the Kabbalistic tree, and this is the Arizal's version of the tree, where there's only a single line going down from Yesod to Malkut. Other tree diagrams, you'll see lines going from Hod down to Malkut and Netzat down to Malkut. And there's a reason. It's like anything else. When you're studying one aspect of all this, certain things are interpreted certain ways. And when you're studying a different aspect, it changes. That includes the Sefirot, includes their interrelationships, and even includes the lines. So the point here is that everything has to pass through Yesod. It's actually, Yesod is associated with the god name Shaddai, which is, God the provider, right? El Shaddai. And everything God that comes through Yesod, and everything from Malkut goes up through Yesod. So if Yesod is functioning correctly, and Yesod is where the Zadik is, the righteous person, it's the aspect of Joseph and morality, especially sexual morality and immorality, where Joseph was said to pass that test with Potiphar's wife and all of that. So Yesod is very critical for proper godly behavior. If it's not happening, it's almost like there's a blockage there, like there's something in your drain keeping the water from coming through, So when Yesod is not functioning right, then blessings from above don't descend into Malkut, and our ability to ascend also gets halted there. So that's the aspect there of a righteous behavior, especially regarding morality, both ways. I had something else I want to say about that. So there's 4 characters here that at one point or another in the movie have an interesting connection with Yesod. Yesod is very complex because everything comes into Yesod before coming into our world. So Morpheus, start with him. He's the easiest one. When Neo or anyone else comes out of the Matrix and they start, and they when they go to come out of the Matrix, he's the one with the red pill there. Right? They all get the pill choice, and that pill choice is at Yesod. You make a connection there to go forward into the spiritual dimensions and learn more, or you take the blue pill and you go back down into Malkut, into the world of the Matrix. So that's Morpheus is that connecting role there. And even like you see with Neo, after he helps them make the connection, they start doing what? They start training in the dojo with the karate and all that stuff, and that's fighting. Remember what I said about seraph. You don't know someone until you fight them, and that the fighting concepts in the Matrix, when you fight, it's symbolic of making a connection where you're actually in the interaction causes you to learn more about that. So when Neo's training with Morpheus and fighting, he's learning. When he fights with Smith, he's learning. All of these aspects of fighting have to do with that. Then you have, we mentioned earlier, the Merovingian top center there. The Merovingian is a very, he is actually a failure at Yesod. He's very immoral. In fact, his girlfriend calls him a pompous ass, and she knows he's cheating on her, and he does it in the movie. So in terms of sexual morality in Joseph at Yesod, he's the total failure at Yesod there. He's the opposite of that, okay? And he is a trafficker of information. He has control over Yesod very much of what passes through one way or the other. And that's going to be important in a minute. Two other characters are Niobe on the left. As I said, she is the balance, if you will. She's very calculating. She's the balance between Locke and Morpheus. There's also a scene where after the big crash and all of that, when they crash the ship and they have to appear before the council, Morpheus is on the right. This other commander, I forget his name, Roland. She says, hold on to your lunch, Roland. He's on the left and she's in the middle. And it's interesting, their perspectives are exactly that. And Morpheus is very positive and all this, and the other guy's a negative, and she's a balance between the two. It's a very, very interesting character she represents. She's going to be big in the fourth movie. In fact, female characters in general are going to be bigger in the fourth movie. We're going to get to an important one in a minute. And this is kind of the segue. Ramachandra in the bottom right talks all about connection. One of the most beautiful scenes in the movie when he talks about how he loves his daughter. And Neo says, love? What do you mean love? You're a program? He goes, it's a word. What matters is the connection. What matters is the connection it implies. It's very deep. And the concept of love, ahava, in Kabbalah goes all the way back to the very beginning of beginnings, to Ein Sof, to the, before everything. It's pure love at that level. All of the other attributes and dichotomies and opposites and everything are in existence, but beyond, it's just Hashem is just pure love. So it sounds kind of, oh, that's cute. No, it's going to be very significant in the fourth movie in terms of where things go. In fact, it's real interesting. In one of the interviews, I do follow some of the magazine interviews online just to see for clues. And Keanu Reeves actually said this movie is a love story. It's all about love. And I'm like, okay, exactly. But what does that mean, right? All right, so Yesod, the connecting piece, that's where your train station is there, where people go in and out from the program world down into the Matrix and all that, right? And then you come finally to the attribute of Malkut. Malkut is always feminine, that's consistent. It's the bride, the Shekhinah, it's the whole the Ruach HaKodesh, it's Jerusalem below, it's all of these things. And this is where the feminine aspect, which is going, again, I said is going to be critical in the fourth movie because there has to be arousal from below, and below is Malkut. Malkut is very feminine traits. And you have three characters that related to Malkut in the previous movies. Obviously Trinity, because she represented like the bride concept to Neo, right? The divine bride and groom, when they come together, stuff happens. And I have multiple sections of that on the website too to read. Persephone, as we mentioned earlier, is kind of like the counterfeit or opposite to that. It's interesting because she also, again, there's no good guys or bad guys here. She actually helps them in here. It's kind of interesting. There's obviously something in it for her too. The concept of the kiss, she wants a kiss from Neo. I got a whole thing from Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, on what the kiss is in Kabbalah. And there's 4 levels to the aspects to this kiss, and all 4 are represented in the Matrix movies. Another one of those mind-blowing things. So she's that counter female to the serpent, to the Merovingian. And then we come to what I think is going to be the most important character, probably the most important character right up there in the next movie, which is Sati, the little girl, because there's something very odd and mysterious that they don't tell us everything in the first movies. It's like you hear one thing. It's like the thing with the prophecy. Oh, the prophecy didn't come true, and so it must be a form of control. No, it's coming true. It's just there's 2 parts to it, and people don't know that. So what's with Sati? Well, we're told, her parents loved her and they They snuck her into the Matrix, blah, blah, blah. She's called the last exile. That's a very significant term in Kabbalah because the last exile, the last soul comes in from the guf, it's called, and then Mashiach comes in, the end comes. Real interesting. Sati is brought down, she's a program, so she's from like the spiritual realms, if you will, and she comes down into the world of the human beings. And I believe, back to our image at the very beginning with the snake and the little girl, that's going to be, and that has shades of Book of Revelation, if you know what I'm talking about, the woman and the serpent. That is going to be this part of the final phase of all of this, is going to be the struggle between the Merovingian and Sati and what they represent. A grown-up Sati, she won't be a little girl. And oh, by the way, they hired an Indian actress for the next movie. Bingo, right? It's like, I will be shocked if she's not Sati in the next movie, because that's really what it is going to come down to, is going to come down to this serpent figure and what that figure is trying to accomplish versus, which is similar to Smith. Smith said, I want the same you want to Neo. I want everything, you know? So you're going to see another aspect of the dark side, the Sitra Achra, the Merovingian, and Sati being the program that came down into the world to help the humans. Really, that's what she's there for. She's going to be critical to, everyone was rectified. If you remember, this is one of the key things at the end of the third movie. And speaking of good guys versus bad guys, when Neo lets Smith take him over, and he does, and then Smith realizes something's wrong here, and then he sort of figures it out, and he says, it's not fair, it's not fair. And so he was part of the plan. He was, part of what he had. What does the Oracle say? We're all here to do what we're all here to do. In Smith's case, he saw 99% of it, or so he thought, but he didn't understand fully that he was just a means, that he makes this connection to all the matrix that Neo can't, but then he connects to Neo, who's connected to the source, because Neo's a Zadik, who it's a concept called Bitul, where you just completely nullify yourself and give yourself to God, to the greater good. I got all the articles on this on the website. And so because Neo is able to do that, Smith is tricked, and there's a whole section in there on how God tricks the evil realm like this. And so the connection between the source to Neo to Smith, who's connected to the matrix worlds, that light, the Orient Sof, the light from above comes through Neo into the whole matrix. Everything gets reset. Everything gets touched by this light, all the characters and everything. So there's something different now that has been enabled, that enables all the people, that arousal from below that's going to come in the fourth movie. This is all the Kabbalistic explanation. So Smith failed to see the source mind. Well, yeah, nobody really understands the source correctly because it's outside of their whole realm of existence. They're all programs or humans in the matrix. It's like, who has any idea what the source is? It's like almost like a legend, it's almost like, oh yeah, there's something beyond all this, but we don't quite understand it. The architect understands it to a point, but he was so, there's a whole concept of Chokhmah being so singular that it gets stale and can't think out of the box with a new idea. Neo comes along and he thinks, oh yeah, he's just another one, you got to plug yourself back in like the other five. No, Neo's the sixth one, and the sixth one's the last one, and the one that makes the connections according to Kabbalah. He was the Mashiach ben Yosef type figure. The architect represents the father concept, Chokhmah, on the top right, just like Oracle is Bina, the mother concept on the left. Together, they are responsible for creation in terms of everything below them, the programs, the angelic realm, which is the programs, and then the matrix world, which is our world we live in now, our world of concealment. But neither the architect nor the Oracle truly understand what the source is. They can't, because it's outside of they just know they came from there probably, and they don't know much about it. It takes the Zadik, as the Oracle said in that third speech, the power of the one goes all the way back to the source and beyond. The Zadik, which is really the true Zadik, the Mashiach, Rabbi Nachman says the true Zadik is the Mashiach. So Neo in this Messiah role, and because he surrenders himself even to the point of death, in all three movies, he surrenders himself to the point of death. And Bitul, complete self-annulment, like a martyrdom, and even to the very end. Because of that willingness to do that, his soul, elevated to the point where he can connect back to the source, whereas no one else can. So the path of the one ended at the source, but the role of the one continues past that into the fourth movie. That's the distinction. So he made the path, he made that. Jacob, in his dream of the ladder, Jacob is called the ladder. Solam Yaakov. He's actually called the ladder because he becomes that connecting piece. If you go to the New Testament in John chapter 1, verse 51, I think, Yeshua says, you'll see the angels going up and down the Son of Man. The same allusion. So the righteous Zadik person stands in as the Son, S-O-N. Remember, we talked about that earlier. The 6 Sefirot are called the Son. The bottom one is called the daughter, and then the mother and father. So the Son of God, if you will, is this represented by these 6 Sefirot. And when they're connected, the whole system's connected, the lower female and the upper female. I've got a thing on gematria on there that's just absolutely mind-blowing from the movie. I'll just tell you, this take 1 minute. This is one of the most mind-blowing things in the Matrix. They go to see the keymaker. Keymaker is critical. You know who that is, right? And the keymaker tells them that there's this window that's going to open, door window. It's a window, he calls it. And he says the window is open for 314 seconds. That's people have tried to figure that out. It's really obvious if you've read the Kabbalistic text, what's being said here. And not only that, but he calls it the width and the breadth, right? Like the length and the width, like when you're measuring across and then on the side. He says the width and the breadth is 314 seconds, which is weird because he's talking about space and time. He's saying the width and breadth is in terms of time. It's very odd. But if you know, it's not pi. That's one of the things people have jumped at. It's not pi. It's got nothing to do with that. Sorry, I didn't mean to be rude or anything, but it doesn't. No, 314 is very specific. 314 is the gematria of Shaddai that we talked about. It's also the gematria of Metatron, this angelic figure who plays this role. So 314 represents these aspects of Shaddai as Yesod, of making the connection. More specifically, though, the keymaker, he said it's the width and the breadth. So that's called a chibur, when you multiply 2 numbers to get to a deeper concept. So width and breadth. So there's 2 numbers that are multiplied to give you 314. Okay, that's weird. So there's some possibilities, but it's a simple one. Actually, it's 2 times 157. Why is that significant? Because Neo is connecting the matrix world, Malkut, represented by the lower female, which is Trinity, which is Rachel in the Bible story, to the Bina, the beyond this world, right? The upper connection to the upper levels. Bina is that connection. Bina is Leah in the biblical story. So Neo is connecting the 2 females, the Malkut at the bottom, Bina above. In between those 2 are the 6 Sefirot, the Son. So he's the son between the daughter and the mother, making that connection. You with me? So going back, 314 is 2 times 157. 157 happens to be the gematria for the female. Nukve is the word, gematria of 157. So he connects the 2 times 2 is 314, which is the width and breadth of the window that the keymaker spoke of. So that blows the lid off something right there. That's just like absolutely incredible that number's in there. And that's the explanation. Take that one to the bank, okay? All right, so I'm gonna, I think, run out of slides here. And then if I'm still up, I'm psyched, so I'm feeling better now. I've been having some health issues, but I get pumped up by this stuff, so thank you for sticking around. So the female element is going to be important. Neo, remember, was the 6th one. So we've literally like gone through these 6,000 years in that respect. It's almost like the 4th movie of the Matrix, to me, is almost like the millennial world. Because the Mashiach's been sort of revealed here, right? In terms of Neo, they kind of say, oh, he's like, but there's more to come, right? This another interim period. It almost seems to resemble at least the book of Revelation, a new concept of that millennial realm, that there's something that happens and then there's another big battle and then finally go in the Olam Haba, because that's the 7th, right? You have 6,000 years, the 6th, and then the 7th. The Kabbalah says that we're human beings from the Garden of Eden forward is 6,000 years of history, give or take. There's a caveat there. And then the 7th is the millennial kingdom, right? The kingdom of the Messiah. So it's almost like that next movie is almost in that stage, kind of. You know what I mean? Still working out some wrinkles here, but it's just really interesting because there's going to be there has to be an arousal from below. It's the last opportunity. The people come together, but there's going to be a lot of issues. If you study what the sages and rabbis say, no, there probably won't be a fifth matrix, because I don't understand how they could, because that would be the Olam Haba. So this is going to slide us right into the world to come. I believe, unless they split this one in two, because the last two movies were actually one movie that they split into two, you know, which is, but I don't believe that there could be a fifth movie, and it would be very different, you know, be very weird, because this should take us right into the Olam Haba. This should be the final, the seventh millennium, the which is Malkut, which is the bride, so you're going to see very strong feminine aspects. Sati, Niobe. There's two new female actresses they hired. I think one of them might be a new accomplice to the Merovingian. I wouldn't doubt that he has a new chick, you know. Typical man, he gets rid of the old, you know. So that's my thought. It's gonna be a strong feminine element. I have a whole article on that, on the feminine element in the fourth movie. So no, I think it'll conclude with this. I do, or unless they split it in two parts, like I said. But I don't think they will. I think it'll just be a 2.5 hour, 3 hour extravaganza. Let me see if I have one more slide after this. I think that's all the real slides for this. Yeah, this is just that's the website, Matrix4Humans.com. And if you go to knowledge base there, that's where all the articles are. And then next to it, your blogs is where there's some other inside information I present in kind of a fun way through character blogs. I put it on my Oracle hat or my Morpheus hat or Ramachandra.